In the silent dawn of human history, before empires rose and cities touched the sky, our ancestors wielded only stone and fire. But then, something extraordinary happened. From the rugged mountains of Anatolia to the misty valleys of the Caucasus, humankind discovered a power hidden within the earth itself: metal. It was more than a discovery, it was a revolution. Around 3300 BC, the fusion of copper-rich ores and newfound mastery over fire sparked one of the greatest transformations in human history: the birth of metallurgy. At ancient sites like Bela Voda in Serbia, where copper artifacts dating back to 5000 BC still whisper stories of flame and ambition, we glimpse the moment when humanity learned to remake nature's raw elements into tools, weapons, and dreams. This is the story of fire, earth, and ingenuity, the story of how metal reshaped our destiny. The transformation from stone to metal represents one of humanity's most profound technological leaps, fundamentally altering the trajectory of human civilization. This revolutionary shift began around 3300 BC in the mountainous regions of Anatolia and the Caucasus, where abundant copper ores and the necessary high-temperature furnace technology first converged to create the conditions for metallurgy. The earliest evidence of copper smelting appears in the archaeological record at sites like Bela Voda in Serbia, where copper artifacts dating to approximately 5000 BC demonstrate that humans had already begun extracting metal from or through controlled heating processes. However, pure copper, while malleable and useful for decorative items and simple tools, possessed significant limitations. The metal was relatively soft, prone to bending under stress, and required frequent resharpening when used for cutting implements. These constraints meant that stone tools continued to dominate practical applications throughout the Chalcolithic period. The breakthrough came through what appears to have been an accidental discovery in the smelting workshops of Anatolia and the Caucasus region. Copper ores in these areas naturally contain trace amounts of tin, arsenic, and other metals. When smelted together, these impurities created alloys that were significantly harder and more durable than pure copper. The most significant of these discoveries was bronze, created when tin comprised approximately 10 to 12% of the copper-tin mixture. This alloy possessed remarkable properties. It was harder than copper, held a sharper edge longer, and could be cast into complex shapes that were impossible to achieve with stone. Archaeological excavations at Arslan Tepe in eastern Anatolia have revealed sophisticated metallurgical workshops dating to 3350 BC, complete with furnaces capable of reaching temperatures exceeding 1000 degrees Celsius. These installations included bellows systems, crucibles, and specialized tools for handling molten metal. The discovery of tin ingots at these sites, some bearing distinctive markings that suggest systematic trade networks, indicates that metallurgists were deliberately seeking out tin sources to create bronze alloys rather than relying solely on natural impurities and copper ores. The site of Catalhoyuk, occupied continuously from approximately 7500 to 5700 BC, provides crucial insight into the gradual adoption of metal technology. The earliest levels of the settlement show exclusive use of obsidian and flint tools, with copper appearing only as small decorative objects like beads and pins. By the later occupation phases, copper tools become more common, though they supplement rather than replace stone implements. Excavations have uncovered copper axes, awls, and fish hooks alongside traditional stone scrapers and blades, suggesting a transitional period where both technologies coexisted. The workshops at Catalhoyuk reveal the emergence of specialized craftsmen who devoted their time exclusively to metalworking. These individuals possessed knowledge of or identification, smelting temperatures and alloy compositions that required years of training to master. Unlike stone tool production, which could be learned quickly and practiced by most community members, metallurgy demanded dedicated specialists with access to specific raw materials and equipment. The Varna necropolis in Bulgaria, dating to approximately 4,600 to 4,200 BC, provides perhaps the most dramatic evidence of the social transformations accompanying the adoption of metal technology. The cemetery contains over 300 graves, but the distribution of grave goods reveals stark inequalities that were largely absent from earlier Neolithic burials. Grave 43, belonging to a middle-aged male, contained over 1.5 kilograms of gold objects, including what may be the world's oldest worked gold artifacts. The burial also included copper axes, chisels, and a stone hammer axe, suggesting this individual held high status partly through control of metallurgical knowledge or resources. The contrast between elite burials like Grave 43 and simpler interments at Varna demonstrates the emergence of social stratification directly linked to metal technology. While some graves contained elaborate gold diadems, copper tools, and imported materials, others held only simple pottery vessels or were completely without grave goods. This disparity suggests that access to metal objects and the knowledge to produce them became markers of social status and economic power. Early Mesopotamian settlements provide additional evidence of this technological and social transformation. At Tel Yessawan in Iraq, dating to approximately 6000 BC, archaeologists have uncovered evidence of copper smelting alongside the development of irrigation agriculture. The site's layout shows distinct residential areas with larger, more elaborate structures containing copper tools and ornaments, while smaller dwellings yielded primarily stone and ceramic artifacts. This spatial segregation reflects the emergence of social hierarchies, based partly on differential access to metal technology. The site of Tepagora, occupied from approximately 5000 to 1500 BC, demonstrates the evolution of metallurgical techniques over time. Early levels show simple copper objects produced through cold hammering copper, while later phases reveal evidence of sophisticated casting techniques using multi-piece molds. The discovery of a copper working quarter in level 8A, dating to approximately 3500 BC, includes furnaces, crucibles, and slag deposits indicating large-scale metal production. The associated residential structures in this quarter were notably larger and better constructed than those in other parts of the settlement, suggesting that metallurgical specialists enjoyed elevated social status. The transition from stone to metal occurred at dramatically different rates across various regions and cultures. While Anatolian and Mesopotamian societies began adopting bronze technology around 3300 BC, European communities lagged significantly behind. The bell beaker culture, which spread across Western Europe between 2800 and 1800 BC, represents one of the earliest widespread adoption of copper and bronze technology in the region. Bell beaker sites contain distinctive copper daggers, archery equipment, and ornamental objects, but stone tools remained dominant for everyday tasks. In Britain, the transition was even more gradual. The Amesbury archer, discovered near Stonehenge and dating to approximately 2300 BC, was buried with copper knives and gold ornaments that likely originated in continental Europe. However, contemporary British sites show continued reliance on flint tools for most practical purposes. with metal objects serving primarily ceremonial or status display functions. The full adoption of bronze technology in Britain did not occur until around 2000 BC, nearly 1,300 years after its development in Anatolia. The technological requirements for bronze production created the world's first truly international trade networks. Tin, essential for bronze production, occurred in relatively few locations worldwide. The primary sources included the Erzgebirge Mountains between modern Germany and Czech Republic, Cornwall in southwestern Britain, and parts of Central Asia. This scarcity meant that bronze-producing societies required extensive trade connections to maintain their technological advantage. Evidence for these early trade networks appears in the form of standardized ingot shapes found across vast distances. Oxhide ingots, so named for their distinctive four-handled shape resembling a stretched animal hide, have been discovered from Cyprus to Sardinia, suggesting systematic exchange systems. These ingots, typically weighing between 20 and 30 kilograms, bore markings indicating their origin and purity, demonstrating sophisticated quality control measures. The social implications of these trade networks were profound. Communities that controlled tin sources or strategic trade routes accumulated wealth and power far beyond what their local resources would suggest. The site of Uluburun, a Bronze Age shipwreck off the Turkish coast dating to approximately 1300 BC, contained cargo from at least 7 different cultures, including tin ingots from Central Asia, copper from Cyprus, amber from the Baltic, and ivory from Africa. This diversity illustrates how bronze production created interdependent economic relationships spanning continents. The emergence of specialized craftsmen fundamentally altered social organization within Bronze Age communities. Unlike Neolithic societies where most individuals possessed similar skill sets and contributed equally to community survival, bronze-producing societies required individuals with highly specialized knowledge. Master metalworkers commanded respect and resources, as their skills were essential for producing the tools and weapons that increasingly defined military and economic success. Archaeological evidence suggests these craftsmen often enjoyed elevated social status, comparable to religious leaders or warriors. At the site of Knossos in Crete, linear B tablets dating to approximately 1450 BC record the names and occupations of palace personnel, including bronze smiths who received rations equal to those of high-ranking officials. The tablets also document the allocation of bronze ingots to specific craftsmen, indicating centralized control over metal resources and production. The technological revolution of bronze production also transformed warfare and conflict resolution. Bronze weapons were superior to stone alternatives in every measurable way. They were sharper, more durable, and could be produced in standardized forms that allowed for coordinated military tactics. The earliest bronze spearheads and daggers appear in archaeological contexts around 3000 BC in Mesopotamia and Anatolia, coinciding with evidence for increased fortification and defensive architecture at contemporary settlements. This military advantage created powerful incentives for societies to adopt bronze technology rapidly once they encountered it. Communities that failed to develop metallurgical capabilities found themselves at severe disadvantages in conflicts with bronze-equipped neighbors. The result was a technological arms race that accelerated the spread of metallurgy across Eurasia and Africa, as societies either developed their own bronze production capabilities or established trade relationships with bronze-producing regions. The environmental impact of early bronze production was considerable and often underestimated in archaeological discussions. Smelting copper and tin required enormous quantities of fuel, typically charcoal produced from hardwood forests. A single bronze axe required approximately 200 kilograms of wood to produce the necessary charcoal for smelting, not including the fuel needed for initial or processing and final tool finishing. This demand placed significant pressure on local forest resources and likely contributed to deforestation around major metallurgical centers. Evidence for this environmental impact appears in pollen records from regions with intensive bronze production. Cores from lakes near ancient smelting sites show dramatic decreases in tree pollen and corresponding increases in grass and shrub species, indicating large-scale forest clearance. These changes often coincided with increased soil erosion and siltation in nearby waterways, suggesting that early metallurgy had far-reaching ecological consequences that extended well beyond the immediate production sites. The mastery of bronze production between 3000 and 2500 BC marked a technological revolution that fundamentally transformed human society. Building upon the foundational metallurgical knowledge developed in Anatolia and the Caucasus, craftsmen across the ancient world began perfecting sophisticated techniques that pushed the boundaries of what was possible with metal technology. The development of lost wax casting, known as cierpidu, represented perhaps the most significant advancement in bronze working during this period. This technique, first documented at sites in Mesopotamia around 2800 BC, allowed artisans to create complex three-dimensional objects with intricate details that were impossible to achieve through simple hammering or basic mold casting. The process began with the creation of a detailed wax model of the desired object, which was then covered in multiple layers of clay to form a mold. When heated, the wax melted and drained away through specially created channels, leaving a hollow cavity that perfectly matched the original wax form. Molten bronze poured into this cavity created objects with remarkable precision and detail. Archaeological evidence from the Royal Cemetery at Ur demonstrates the sophistication of lost wax casting by 2600 BC. The tomb of Queen Pwabi contained bronze vessels with elaborate decorative elements, including delicate figurines and complex geometric patterns that could only have been produced through this advanced technique. X-ray analysis of these artifacts reveals internal structures consistent with lost wax casting, including characteristic porosity patterns and metal flow indicators that distinguish this method from simpler casting techniques. The perfection of bronze alloying ratios during this period required extensive experimentation and accumulated knowledge passed down through generations of specialized craftsmen. Mesopotamian metallurgists discovered that different applications demanded specific tin-to-copper ratios for optimal performance. Weapons and cutting tools performed best with tin content between 10 to 12%, providing maximum hardness while maintaining workability. Decorative objects and vessels, which required malleability for detailed work, used lower tin concentrations of 6 to 8%. Bells and musical instruments demanded higher tin content, sometimes reaching 20%, to achieve the resonant qualities desired for acoustic applications. Spectroscopic analysis of bronze artifacts from Harappan sites in the Indus Valley reveals sophisticated understanding of these principles by 2500 BC. Bronze axes from Harappa consistently show tin content of 11.2%, remarkably close to the optimal ratio for cutting tools. In contrast, decorative bangles from the same site contain 7.8% tin, indicating deliberate adjustment of alloy composition based on intended function. This precision suggests standardized production methods and quality control measures that required extensive technical knowledge and organizational systems. The development of specialized furnaces and workshops transformed bronze production from small-scale craft activity to industrial-level manufacturing. The site of Tepe Yahya in southeastern Iran provides exceptional evidence of these technological advances. Excavations have revealed a metallurgical complex dating to 2700 BC that included multiple furnace types designed for different stages of bronze production. Primary smelting furnaces, constructed with thick ceramic walls and sophisticated air circulation systems, reached temperatures exceeding 1,200 degrees Celsius through the use of leather bellows operated by teams of workers. Secondary refining furnaces at Tepe Yahya featured innovative designs that allowed precise temperature control during the critical alloying process. These smaller installations included adjustable air vents and removable ceramic linings that could be replaced when damaged by repeated heating cycles. The discovery of standardized crucibles with capacity markings indicates systematic approaches to batch production, with specific quantities of copper and tin measured and combined according to established formulas. Workshop organization at major bronze production centers reveals the emergence of complex manufacturing hierarchies. The metallurgical quarter at Kanesh in Anatolia, dating to 2500 BC, contained distinct areas for different production stages. Raw material storage areas held carefully sorted copper and tin ingots, while preparation workshops housed grinding stones and scales for measuring alloy components. Casting areas featured multiple furnace types and extensive collections of molds for producing standardized tool and weapon forms. The revolution in warfare technology during this period fundamentally altered military tactics and social organization across the ancient world. Bronze weapons offered unprecedented advantages over stone alternatives, combining superior cutting ability with a durability that allowed sustained combat operations. The earliest bronze spearheads from this period, discovered at sites like Tel Brak in Syria, featured sophisticated designs with reinforced sockets that prevented breakage during thrusting attacks. These weapons measured between 20 and 35 centimeters in length, with carefully calculated weight distribution that balanced penetrating power with maneuverability. Bronze sword development progressed rapidly during this period, evolving from simple daggers to sophisticated weapons designed for specific combat roles. The site of Alakahoyuk in Anatolia has yielded bronze swords dating to 2600 BC that demonstrate remarkable metallurgical skill. These weapons featured complex hilts cast in single pieces with the blade, eliminating weak points that plagued earlier composite designs. Microscopic analysis reveals deliberate work hardening of cutting edges through controlled hammering, creating weapons that maintain sharp edges through extended use. The emergence of bronze armor marked another revolutionary development in military technology. Early bronze helmets from sites in Mesopotamia and Anatolia show sophisticated understanding of protective design principles. The helmet discovered in the Royal Cemetery at Ur, dating to approximately 2600 BC, features distinctive conical shape that deflected blows while distributing impact forces across the entire structure. The bronze sheet, hammered to uniform thickness of 2.3 millimeters, provided protection while remaining light enough for extended wear during combat operations. Scale armor systems developed during this period represented complex manufacturing challenges that required coordinated production efforts. Archaeological evidence from Ebla in Syria reveals workshops producing hundreds of small bronze scales, each measuring approximately 3 by 2 centimeters, that were sewn onto leather backing to create flexible protective garments. The uniformity of these scales, with consistent thickness and standardized attachment holes, indicates mass production techniques that supported equipped military forces numbering in the hundreds. The social implications of advanced bronze weaponry extended far beyond military applications. Professional warrior classes emerged in societies that could support specialized military personnel, equipped with expensive bronze weapons and armor. Burial evidence from this period shows clear distinctions between warrior elites and general population members. The warrior burial at Arslan Tepe, dating to 2900 BC, contained a complete bronze weapon set including spear, sword, dagger, and mace, representing a monetary value equivalent to several years of agricultural production for an average farmer. Military hierarchies developed to organize and command these professional warriors, creating new forms of social stratification based on military rank and combat effectiveness. Mesopotamian texts from slightly later periods describe military units organized around bronze weapon types, with spearmen, archers, and sword fighters operating under specialized commanders. These organizational structures required administrative systems to track personnel, equipment, and supply requirements, contributing to the development of complex bureaucratic institutions. Agricultural innovations during this period leveraged bronze technology to achieve unprecedented increases in crop yields and farming efficiency. Bronze plows represented the most significant advancement, allowing farmers to break ground that was previously impossible to cultivate with wooden or stone implements. The bronze plowshare discovered at Susa, dating to 2700 BC, measures 28 centimeters in length with a carefully shaped cutting edge that could penetrate compacted soil while turning furrows for optimal seed placement. The design of bronze agricultural tools reflected sophisticated understanding of mechanical principles and ergonomic considerations. Bronze sickles from this period featured curved blades with serrated edges that cut grain stalks cleanly without crushing the stems. The sickle from Tepe Hisar shows a blade angle of 35 degrees from the handle, calculated to maximize cutting efficiency while minimizing user fatigue during extended harvesting operations. Handle attachments used bronze rivets and reinforcing plates that distributed stress loads, preventing tool failure during intensive use. Bronze hoes and mattocks allowed farmers to work heavier soils and clear new agricultural areas previously unsuitable for cultivation. The mattock head from Shah in Iran demonstrates advanced metallurgical techniques with a socket design that secured the wooden handle through mechanical compression rather than simple binding. This connection method prevented loosening during use and allowed rapid handle replacement when necessary. The agricultural productivity gains from bronze tools supported larger population concentrations and enabled surplus production that funded other economic activities. Settlement size increases during this period correlate directly with the adoption of bronze agricultural technology. Tel Elon in Syria expanded from approximately 15 hectares around 3000 BC to over 90 hectares by 2500 BC, coinciding with archaeological evidence for widespread bronze tool use in surrounding agricultural areas. Artistic and ceremonial applications of bronze during this period demonstrate the material's significance beyond purely functional uses. Bronze vessels from elite contexts show remarkable technical and aesthetic sophistication. The ceremonial cauldron from the royal cemetery at Earth features elaborate decorative elements including cast animal figures and complex geometric patterns created through lost wax casting techniques. The vessel's capacity of 47 liters and weight of 23 kilograms made it suitable only for special occasions, indicating its role in religious or state ceremonies. Religious artifacts from this period reveal bronze's symbolic associations with divine power and eternal durability. The bronze cult statue fragments from Tel Asma show sophisticated understanding of human anatomy and proportional relationships. These figures, ranging from 30 to 150 centimeters in height, feature inlaid eyes of shell and lapis lazuli that create remarkably lifelike appearances. The casting techniques required to produce these statues involved complex multi-piece molds and careful temperature control to prevent defects in the finished products. Jewelry and personal ornaments demonstrated bronze's versatility in creating intricate decorative objects. The bronze torque from Malarka Hoyuk shows sophisticated wire drawing techniques that produced uniform metal strands twisted into complex patterns. Analysis reveals that the wire diameter varies by less than 0.2 millimeters along its entire 85-centimeter length, indicating precise control over the drawing process and sophisticated quality standards. Architectural applications of bronze during this period included both structural and decorative elements that enhanced building functionality and aesthetic appeal. Bronze door fittings from the palace context show advanced mechanical understanding, with pivot systems and locking mechanisms that operated smoothly despite the material's weight. The bronze door bands from Kafaja featured decorative relief work depicting mythological scenes, combining functional hardware with artistic expression in single integrated designs. Monumental bronze sculptures from this period pushed the boundaries of casting technology and artistic expression. The life-size bronze figures from Mesopotamian temple contexts required sophisticated foundry operations involving multiple workers and carefully coordinated timing. The casting of large bronze objects demanded precise calculation of metal quantities, mold preparation and cooling rates to prevent cracking or other defects that would ruin months of preparatory work. The technical achievements of bronze workers during this period established foundations for metallurgical traditions that would persist for millennia. The innovations in casting techniques, alloy composition, and workshop organization created production systems capable of supporting complex civilizations and their military, agricultural, and artistic requirements. The mastery of bronze technology between 3000 and 2500 BC represents a pivotal moment when human technical capabilities reached levels that would fundamentally reshape the trajectory of cultural development across the ancient world. The mastery of bronze technology created the foundation for humanity's first urban revolution, which unfolded along the fertile banks of the Tigris and Euphrates rivers in southern Mesopotamia. Here, between approximately 3500 and 3000 BC, the world witnessed the emergence of complex societies that transcended the limitations of village-based agricultural communities. These early urban centers represented a fundamental shift in human organization, concentrating thousands of individuals within defensive walls and coordinating their activities through unprecedented administrative complexity. Uruk, the world's first true city, dominated the southern Mesopotamian landscape by 3200 BC, covering approximately 400 hectares and housing an estimated 40,000 to 50,000 inhabitants. Archaeological excavations have revealed a settlement organized around massive temple complexes, with the White Temple standing atop a 13-meter artificial platform that required coordinated labor from hundreds of workers over multiple construction seasons. The temple's limestone walls, precisely cut and fitted without mortar, demonstrate sophisticated engineering capabilities that demanded specialized craftsmen and centralized planning authority. The urban layout at Uruk reflects deliberate city planning principles that maximized both defensive capabilities and internal organization. Residential districts clustered around craft production areas, with bronze working quarters positioned near the city's periphery to minimize fire hazards while maintaining access to fuel supplies and raw materials. Excavations in the Iana precinct have uncovered standardized residential units, measuring approximately 8 by 12 meters, arranged in regular blocks separated by narrow streets that facilitated movement while conserving valuable urban space. Administrative buildings at Uruk House, the earliest bureaucratic institutions, managing the complex logistics required to sustain large urban populations. The discovery of over 5,000 clay tablets from the Iana archive, dating between 3,200 and 3000 BC, provides detailed insight into these early governmental systems. These records document the allocation of barley rations to workers, the distribution of bronze tools to craft specialists, and the coordination of agricultural activities across the city's extensive hinterland. The tablets reveal sophisticated accounting systems that tracked multiple categories of goods and services simultaneously. Individual records document the daily bread rations for temple personnel, specifying quantities based on occupational rank and family size. Metalworking records detail the distribution of copper and tin ingots to bronze smiths, including quality specifications and delivery schedules that ensured continuous production of tools and weapons. Agricultural accounts track seed distribution, field assignments, and harvest yields across hundreds of individual plots managed by the temple administration. Ur emerged as another major urban center by 2900 BC, developing distinct characteristics that reflected different approaches to city organization and regional control. The settlement's location near the Persian Gulf provided access to maritime trade networks that connected Mesopotamia with the Indus Valley, the Iranian Plateau, and the Arabian Peninsula. Archaeological evidence from the Royal Cemetery demonstrates Ur's accumulation of wealth through these trade connections, with grave goods including lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, carnelian from the Indus region, and gold from Anatolia. The urban planning at Ur incorporated sophisticated water management systems that addressed the challenges of maintaining large populations in an arid environment. Canal networks channeled water from the Euphrates through the city, supplying residential districts and craft workshops while providing drainage for waste removal. The main canal, measuring 12 meters in width and lined with fired brick, required engineering expertise that coordinated surveying, construction, and maintenance across multiple administrative districts. Residential architecture at Ur revealed social stratification that reflected the city's complex economic hierarchies. Elite houses in the central districts featured multiple courtyards, private wells, and dedicated workshop spaces for specialized craft production. These structures, built with fired brick and decorated with bronze fittings, contrasted sharply with peripheral residential areas where single-room dwellings housed the majority of the urban population. The disparity in building materials and architectural sophistication demonstrates the concentration of wealth among administrative and commercial elites. The development of cuneiform writing around 3200 BC revolutionized human communication and administrative capability, emerging from the practical needs of urban management in these early Mesopotamian cities. The earliest cuneiform tablets from Uruk contained pictographic symbols representing concrete objects and quantities, gradually evolving into a system capable of recording abstract concepts and complex grammatical relationships. This writing system used wedge-shaped marks impressed into clay tablets with reed styluses, creating permanent records that could be stored, transported, and referenced across extended periods. Scribal schools at Ur and other major cities trained specialists in cuneiform writing, mathematics, and administrative procedures. Excavations at the scribal quarter in Nippur have revealed practice tablets containing student exercises, including mathematical calculations, literary compositions, and legal document templates. These educational institutions produced the literate bureaucrats essential for managing complex urban societies, creating professional classes whose specialized knowledge commanded significant social status and economic rewards. The evolution of cuneiform from simple accounting notation to sophisticated literary expression occurred rapidly between 3000 and 2500 BC. The Epic of Gilgamesh, preserved in later copies but originating in early Sumerian compositions, demonstrates the system's capacity for recording complex narratives, philosophical concepts, and cultural values. Legal documents from this period show cuneiform's application to recording contracts, property transfers, and judicial decisions that required precise language and standardized terminology. Mathematical innovations accompanying cuneiform development established computational systems that supported urban administration and architectural construction. Mesopotamian mathematicians developed sexagesimal notation using base 60 calculations that facilitated complex engineering projects and astronomical observations. Clay tablets from Nesh contain multiplication tables, geometric formulas, and architectural calculations that demonstrate sophisticated mathematical understanding applied to practical construction problems. The emergence of formal legal codes represented another fundamental innovation of early Mesopotamian civilization, establishing standardized procedures for resolving disputes and maintaining social order within complex urban environments. The Code of Uarnamu, dating to approximately 2100 BC, represents the world's earliest known comprehensive legal document, prescribing specific punishments for various crimes and establishing procedures for civil litigation. This legal framework addressed issues ranging from property theft and adultery to commercial fraud and personal injury, creating predictable consequences that facilitated social stability. Hammurabi's Code, promulgated around 1750 BC, expanded these legal principles into a comprehensive system governing all aspects of Babylonian society. The Code's 282 laws covered commercial transactions, family relationships, property rights, and criminal penalties, establishing precedents that influenced legal development throughout the ancient Near East. The famous principle of proportional justice, an eye for an eye, reflected attempts to limit revenge cycles while ensuring appropriate punishment for criminal behavior. Legal procedures described in these codes required sophisticated administrative systems to implement effectively. Court records Mari and Kanesh document judicial processes involving multiple witnesses, documentary evidence, and appeals procedures that ensured fair treatment for litigants. Professional judges, trained in legal precedents and administrative procedures, presided over these courts, creating specialized institutions that separated judicial functions from religious or authority. The Akkadian Empire, established by Sargon around 2334 BC, represented the world's first multi-ethnic imperial state, unifying diverse Mesopotamian city-states under centralized political control. Sargon's military innovations included professional armies equipped with standardized bronze weapons, coordinated infantry formations, and siege techniques that overcame traditional city fortifications. His forces used composite bows with bronze-tipped arrows, bronze-headed spears arranged in phalanx formations, and bronze axes designed for both combat and siege operations. Administrative reforms under Akkadian rule created imperial bureaucracies that managed territories extending from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean coast. Provincial governors, appointed from Sargon's inner circle, supervised local administrators, while reporting to central authorities in Akkad. This system required extensive communication networks, standardized administrative procedures, and cultural policies that balanced imperial control with local autonomy. Akkadian cultural achievements included artistic innovations that synthesized Sumerian traditions with influences from conquered territories. The victory stele of Naram-Sin demonstrates sophisticated relief sculpture techniques, depicting the king's military triumph with realistic proportions and dynamic compositions that influenced artistic development throughout the region. Bronze sculptures from this period show similar technical advancement, combining traditional Mesopotamian themes with naturalistic representation that reflected expanded cultural horizons. Trade networks under Akkadian administration extended throughout the known world, facilitating cultural exchange and technological diffusion on unprecedented scales. Akkadian merchants established trading posts from Anatolia to the Indus Valley, creating commercial relationships that persisted long after the empire's political collapse. These networks distributed Mesopotamian bronzeworking techniques, cuneiform writing systems, and administrative practices across vast geographical areas. Babylonian achievements in mathematics and astronomy during the Old Babylonian period established scientific foundations that influenced intellectual development for millennia. Babylonian astronomers compiled detailed observational records of planetary movements, lunar cycles, and stellar positions that enabled accurate calendar calculations and agricultural planning. These observations, recorded on cuneiform tablets, demonstrate systematic data collection and mathematical analysis that approached modern scientific methodology. Mathematical innovations included advanced geometric techniques applied to architectural construction and land surveying. Babylonian mathematicians developed formulas for calculating areas of irregular fields, volumes of construction materials, and proportional relationships in architectural design. The famous Babylonian method for calculating square roots achieved remarkable accuracy through iterative approximation techniques that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of numerical relationships. Astronomical calculations enabled Babylonian scholars to predict eclipses, planetary conjunctions, and other celestial events with impressive precision. These capabilities had practical applications in agriculture, religious ceremonies, and political decision-making, establishing astronomy as an essential component of governmental administration. Babylonian astronomical knowledge spread throughout the ancient world through trade contacts and diplomatic relationships, influencing Greek, Persian, and Indian scientific traditions. Architectural achievements during the Babylonian period included massive construction projects that demonstrated advanced engineering capabilities and organizational efficiency. The ziggurat at Babylon, reconstructed during Nebuchadnezzar's reign but built upon earlier foundations, rose approximately 91 meters above the surrounding plain, requiring precise mathematical calculations to ensure structural stability. The monument's 7 ascending levels, connected by external staircases and internal ramps, accommodated religious ceremonies while serving as visible symbols of royal authority. The Assyrian Empire revolutionized military technology and organization, creating professional armies that dominated Near Eastern warfare for over 7 centuries. Assyrian military innovations included iron weapons that surpassed bronze alternatives in hardness and durability, siege engines capable of breaching massive fortifications, and cavalry units that provided unprecedented battlefield mobility. These technological advantages, combined with systematic military organization and brutal psychological warfare, enabled Assyrian expansion from Mesopotamia to Egypt and Anatolia. Assyrian siege warfare employed sophisticated engineering techniques that overcame traditional defensive strategies. Siege engines included battering rams mounted on wheeled platforms, scaling towers that enabled assault troops to attack wall tops, and catapults that launched projectiles over fortifications. Archaeological evidence from Lachish demonstrates Assyrian siege methods, with excavated siege ramps showing systematic approaches to fortress reduction that combined engineering expertise with overwhelming force. Military organization under Assyrian rule created professional armies numbering in the tens of thousands, supported by extensive logistics systems and standardized equipment production. Assyrian workshops produced weapons and armor in standardized patterns, enabling rapid replacement of battlefield losses and consistent training procedures. Administrative records document supply chains that provided food, equipment, and reinforcements to armies operating hundreds of kilometers from Assyrian territory. Psychological warfare tactics included deliberate brutality designed to discourage resistance and facilitate rapid conquest. Assyrian reliefs from Nineveh depict impaled prisoners, flayed captives, and destroyed cities that served as warnings to potential enemies. These images, combined with written accounts of Assyrian cruelty, created reputations that enabled conquest through intimidation rather than actual combat. Administrative innovations under Assyrian rule included provincial systems that balanced central control with local administration, communication networks that enabled rapid information transmission across the empire, and cultural policies that managed diverse ethnic populations. Assyrian governors supervised local officials while implementing imperial policies, creating administrative hierarchies that maintained order across vast territories with diverse populations and conflicting interests. Trade networks during the Assyrian period extended from Central Asia to the Atlantic coast, creating commercial relationships that facilitated cultural exchange and technological diffusion throughout the known world. Assyrian merchants operated under imperial protection, establishing trading posts and commercial relationships that persisted beyond the empire's political boundaries. These networks distributed Mesopotamian technologies, artistic styles, and administrative practices across 3 continents, creating cultural connections that influenced civilizational development for centuries. The Nile River's annual flood cycle created conditions fundamentally different from the unpredictable rainfall patterns that shaped Mesopotamian civilization, establishing Egypt as a unified territorial state rather than a collection of competing city-states. Around 3100 BC, the legendary pharaoh Nemer accomplished the political unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, creating the world's nation-state through military conquest and diplomatic alliance. Archaeological evidence from Hierakonpolis demonstrates the sophisticated bronze weaponry that enabled this unification, including ceremonial mace heads weighing over 2 kilograms and bronze-tipped spears, designed for both combat and ceremonial display. The Nemer palette, discovered at Hierakonpolis and dating to approximately 3100 BC, depicts the pharaoh wearing the white crown of Upper Egypt on one side and the red crown of Lower Egypt on the reverse, symbolically representing the merger of these previously independent regions. The palette's intricate carvings show bound prisoners, decapitated enemies, and tribute bearers, illustrating the military conquest that preceded political integration. Bronze implements appear throughout these scenes, including ceremonial weapons that demonstrate the metal's association with royal authority and divine kingship. Divine kingship concepts emerged during the early dynastic period as pharaohs established themselves as living gods, responsible for maintaining cosmic order through their earthly rule. The pharaoh served as the sole intermediary between the human and divine realms, performing daily rituals that ensured the Nile's annual flood, the sun's daily journey across the sky, and the preservation of Egypt's prosperity against the forces of chaos. This religious framework provided ideological justification for absolute monarchy while creating administrative systems that coordinated activities across Egypt's 1,000 kilometers length. Royal burial practices during the early dynastic period reflected these divine kingship concepts through massive tomb constructions that required coordinated labor from thousands of workers. The tomb of Den at Abydos, dating to approximately 2950 BC, featured a burial chamber measuring 11 by 9 meters, surrounded by subsidiary burials of servants and officials who accompanied the pharaoh into the afterlife. Bronze grave goods included ceremonial daggers, ritual vessels, and personal ornaments that demonstrated the metal's significance in royal mortuary practices. Administrative developments during this period established bureaucratic institutions that managed Egypt's agricultural resources, craft production, and trade relationships with neighboring regions. Hieroglyphic inscriptions from royal tombs document titles and responsibilities of court officials, including overseer of bronze workers, controller of the treasury, and master of royal construction projects. These positions required literacy, mathematical skills, and specialized knowledge that created professional administrative classes distinct from the general population. The transition to the Old Kingdom around 2686 BC marked Egypt's emergence as a major Bronze Age power, characterized by unprecedented architectural achievements and sophisticated state organization. The Pharaoh Djoser's Step Pyramid at Saqqara, designed by the architect Imhotep around 2670 BC, established architectural principles that would define Egyptian monumental construction for the next millennium. The pyramid's six-step structure rose 62 meters above the surrounding desert, requiring precise mathematical calculations and engineering expertise that coordinated the efforts of specialized work gangs over multiple construction seasons. Construction techniques for the step pyramid employed bronze tools that enabled precision stone cutting impossible with earlier copper implements. Archaeological excavations at Saqqara have uncovered bronze chisels, saws, and measuring instruments used by stonemasons to achieve the uniform block sizes and precise joint fitting that characterized Old Kingdom architecture. The pyramid's internal chambers feature granite blocks weighing up to 15 tons, positioned with tolerances measured in millimeters through the use of bronze levers, ramps, and measuring devices. The Great Pyramid of Khufu at Giza, completed around 2560 BC, represents the pinnacle of Old Kingdom engineering achievement and organizational capability. The monument's base covers 13.1 acres with sides measuring 230 meters in length, aligned to cardinal directions with accuracy exceeding 99.9%. Construction required approximately 2.3 million stone blocks averaging 2.5 tons each, quarried, transported, and positioned through systematic work organization that employed an estimated 20,000 workers during peak construction periods. Bronze tools discovered in workers' villages near the Giza pyramids demonstrate the technological foundation for these massive construction projects. Copper and bronze implements included specialized stone-cutting chisels with hardened edges, bronze-tipped wooden levers for moving heavy blocks, and precision measuring tools that ensured architectural accuracy. The workers' cemetery contains graves of individuals with skeletal evidence of heavy labor, buried with bronze tools that indicate their specialized roles in pyramid construction. Khafre's Pyramid Complex, completed around 2532 BC, incorporated architectural innovations that reflected advancing engineering capabilities and expanded religious concepts. The complex included a valley temple connected to the pyramid by a covered causeway, demonstrating sophisticated understanding of ceremonial architecture and processional requirements. The Great Sphinx, carved from a single limestone outcrop, measures 73 meters in length and 20 meters in height, requiring coordinated efforts from teams of sculptors working with bronze tools over multiple years. State organization during the Old Kingdom created administrative systems that managed Egypt's resources with remarkable efficiency, enabling the concentration of wealth and labor necessary for monumental construction projects. Provincial governors, appointed by the pharaoh, supervised local officials while coordinating tribute collection, labor recruitment, and resource allocation according to central directives. Administrative papyri from this period document systematic record-keeping that tracked agricultural production, craft output, and population statistics across Egypt's numerous administrative districts. The Palermo Stone, a fragmentary royal chronicle dating to the 5th dynasty, records annual Nile flood levels, tax assessments, and major construction projects that demonstrate systematic governmental planning extending across multiple reigns. These records show coordinated economic policies that balanced agricultural production with monumental construction, maintaining social stability while achieving architectural goals that required decades of sustained effort. The stone documents bronze production statistics, including quantities of metal allocated to specific projects and workshops throughout Egypt. Pyramid construction logistics required sophisticated supply chains that coordinated activities across hundreds of kilometers. Limestone quarries at Tura, located 15 kilometers south of Giza, supplied fine-quality stone for pyramid casing through Nile transport systems that moved blocks weighing up to 15 tons. Granite quarries at Aswan, 800 kilometers south of Giza, provided specialized stone for internal chambers through river transport operations that required seasonal coordination with Nile flood cycles. Workers' villages near pyramid construction sites housed permanent populations of skilled craftsmen, including stonemasons, bronze workers, carpenters, and supervisors who maintained construction operations year-round. Archaeological excavations at these settlements revealed standardized housing units, communal cooking facilities, and workshop areas equipped with bronze tools and specialized equipment. Medical papyri described treatment procedures for construction injuries, indicating systematic healthcare provision for workers engaged in dangerous occupations. The Middle Kingdom period, beginning around 2055 BC with the reunification under Mentuhotep II, marked Egypt's cultural renaissance and territorial expansion beyond the Nile Valley. Pharaohs of the 12th dynasty established permanent Egyptian presence in Nubia, constructing fortress chains that controlled gold mining operations and trade routes connecting Egypt with sub-Saharan Africa. The fortress at Buhan, built during Senusret I's reign around 1950 BC, featured massive mudbrick walls reinforced with bronze fittings and defensive systems that incorporated advanced military engineering principles. Nubian gold mines, operated under Egyptian control, provided the precious metal that financed Middle Kingdom expansion and monumental construction projects. Archaeological evidence from mining sites shows systematic extraction operations, employing thousands of workers supervised by Egyptian administrators. Bronze mining tools, including picks, hammers, and/or processing equipment, enabled extraction operations that produced hundreds of kilograms of gold annually for the royal treasury. Cultural achievements during the Middle Kingdom included literary masterpieces that established Egyptian literature as a sophisticated artistic medium. The Tale of Sinew, composed during the 12th dynasty, demonstrates narrative techniques and psychological insight that influenced literary development throughout the ancient Near East. The story describes an Egyptian official's adventures in foreign lands, providing detailed descriptions of Bronze Age warfare, diplomatic practices, and cultural differences between Egypt and its neighbors. Middle Kingdom art and architecture reflected renewed confidence and expanded cultural horizons through realistic portraiture and architectural innovations that departed from Old Kingdom conventions. Statuary from this period shows individualized facial features and emotional expressions that suggest artistic interest in psychological representation rather than purely idealized forms. Bronze working reached new levels of sophistication, producing ceremonial weapons, jewelry, and ritual objects that demonstrate advanced metallurgical techniques. The Second Intermediate Period, beginning around 1650 BC, witnessed Egypt's temporary fragmentation and the Hyksos invasion that introduced new military technologies and cultural influences. The Hyksos, likely originating from the Levantine region, established control over northern Egypt through superior bronze weaponry, horse-drawn chariots, and composite bows that gave them decisive military advantages over traditional Egyptian forces. Archaeological evidence from Tel el-Debar shows Hyksos settlements with distinctly non-Egyptian material culture, including bronze weapons types unknown in earlier Egyptian contexts. Hyksos military innovations included bronze-scale armor, improved bronze sword designs, and siege techniques that overcame Egyptian fortress defenses. The composite bow, constructed from wood, horn, and sinew layers, provided greater range and penetrating power than traditional Egyptian bows. Horse-drawn chariots revolutionized battlefield mobility, enabling rapid deployment of archers and quick withdrawal from combat situations. These technological advantages allowed relatively small Hyksos forces to control territories previously defended by much larger Egyptian armies. Cultural exchange during Hyksos rule introduced new artistic styles, religious concepts, and technological innovations that enriched Egyptian civilization despite the political disruption. Hyksos scarabs show artistic synthesis combining Egyptian hieroglyphic writing with Canaanite decorative motifs. Bronze working techniques improved through contact with Levantine metallurgical traditions, producing weapons and tools with enhanced durability and performance characteristics. The expulsion of the Hyksos around 1550 BC by Amesef first initiated the New Kingdom period and Egypt's emergence as the dominant imperial power in the Eastern Mediterranean. Egyptian military reforms incorporated Hyksos innovations while developing new tactics and organizational systems that supported sustained military campaigns beyond Egypt's traditional borders. Professional armies replaced militia forces, creating military institutions that coordinated infantry, chariot units, and specialized support troops in complex battlefield operations. Hatshepsut's reign demonstrated that successful pharaonic rule transcended gender boundaries through effective administration and ambitious construction projects. Her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, carved into limestone cliffs on the west bank of the Nile, represents architectural innovation that harmonized built structures with natural landscape features. The temple's 3 terrace levels, connected by ramps and colonnades, required sophisticated engineering that coordinated stone cutting, transportation, and construction across difficult terrain. Hatshepsut's trading expeditions to Punt, documented in detailed relief carvings at Deir el-Bahari, established commercial relationships that provided exotic goods, including incense, gold, ivory, and live animals for Egyptian temples and royal collections. These expeditions required coordination of naval forces, diplomatic personnel and trading specialists who negotiated with foreign rulers and managed complex logistics across hundreds of kilometers of sea and land routes. Thutmose III's military campaigns established Egyptian control over territories extending from Nubia to the Euphrates River, creating the largest empire in Bronze Age history through systematic conquest and diplomatic alliance. The Battle of Megiddo, around 1457 BC, demonstrated Egyptian military superiority through coordinated infantry and chariot operations that defeated a coalition of Canaanite city-states. Egyptian records describe the capture of 924 chariots, 2,041 horses, and vast quantities of bronze weapons that equipped Egyptian forces for subsequent campaigns. Egyptian siege warfare during Thutmose III's campaigns employed innovative techniques that overcame fortified positions throughout the Levant. Siege equipment included bronze-tipped battering rams, scaling ladders reinforced with bronze fittings, and catapults that launched projectiles over defensive walls. The Siege of Joppa, recorded in Egyptian military annals, describes the use of soldiers hidden in large baskets to infiltrate the city, demonstrating tactical creativity that supplemented technological advantages. Ramesses II's reign marked the height of New Kingdom power and architectural achievement through massive construction projects and military campaigns that maintained Egyptian dominance despite increasing pressure from emerging powers. The temples at Abu Simbel, carved into sandstone cliffs overlooking the Nile, featured colossal statuary that projected Egyptian power throughout Nubia, while demonstrating unprecedented architectural ambition. The larger temple's facade includes 4 seated statues of Ramesses, each measuring 20 meters in height, carved with precision that required coordinated efforts from teams of sculptors working with bronze tools over multiple years. The Battle of Kadesh around 1274 BC represented the largest chariot engagement in ancient warfare, with Egyptian and Hittite forces each fielding thousands of chariots in a conflict that determined control over the Levantine region. Egyptian military records describe tactical formations that coordinated infantry, chariot units, and archer support in complex battlefield maneuvers. Bronze weapons captured from Hittite forces demonstrate the technological sophistication that characterized late Bronze Age warfare, including improved sword designs and specialized armor systems. The Egyptian-Hittite peace treaty following Kadesh established a new balance of power in the eastern Mediterranean that created opportunities for maritime civilizations to flourish beyond the direct control of the great territorial empires. On the island of Crete, separated from mainland political turmoil by 100 kilometers of open sea, a sophisticated Bronze Age civilization emerged that would revolutionize maritime trade and urban planning throughout the Mediterranean basin. The Minoans, named after the legendary King Minos by later archaeologists, developed a unique palace-centered society that combined advanced naval technology with peaceful commercial expansion, creating the first true thalassocracy in human history. Archaeological excavations at Knossos, beginning with Sir Arthur Evans in 1900, revealed a massive palace complex covering 20,000 square meters that served as the administrative, religious, and economic center of Minoan civilization. The palace's construction, initiated around 1900 BC and continuously modified until 1450 BC, demonstrates sophisticated architectural planning that integrated functional requirements with aesthetic considerations. Multi-story buildings reached heights of 4 levels, supported by distinctive downward tapering columns painted in bright red that created open, airy spaces unlike the massive stone architecture of contemporary Egyptian and Mesopotamian structures. The palace's internal organization reflects complex administrative systems that manage diverse economic activities across Crete and beyond. Storage magazines contained hundreds of large ceramic vessels, called pithoi, with capacities ranging from 200 to 1,000 liters each, designed to hold olive oil, wine, grain, and other agricultural products collected as tribute or trade goods. These storage facilities could accommodate supplies for thousands of people over extended periods, indicating systematic resource management that supported not only palace personnel, but also craft specialists, merchants, and military forces. Minoan hydraulic engineering achievements at Knossos included sophisticated water management systems that provided fresh water supply, waste removal, and even indoor plumbing facilities that would not be matched in Europe until the Roman period. Clay pipes with carefully calculated diameters carried water from mountain springs to palace complexes through gravitational flow systems that maintained consistent pressure across multiple levels. Drainage systems included stone-lined channels that removed wastewater and rainwater runoff, preventing structural damage while maintaining sanitary conditions for dense urban populations. The throne room at Knossos features elaborate frescoes depicting dolphins, griffins, and other marine and mythological creatures executed with naturalistic detail that demonstrates advanced artistic techniques. These paintings used mineral pigments that retained brilliant colors for over 3,000 years, applied to lime plaster surfaces through fresco techniques that required rapid, skilled execution before the plaster dried. The artistic style emphasizes movement, natural forms, and vibrant colors that contrast sharply with the more static, formal artistic conventions of contemporary Near Eastern civilizations. Linear script used throughout Minoan administrative records remains undeciphered despite intensive scholarly efforts spanning over a century. Clay tablets from Knossos and other palace sites contain thousands of linear A inscriptions that clearly served administrative functions, recording transactions, inventories, and personnel assignments. The script's syllabic structure suggests relationships to later Greek Linear B, but the underlying language appears unrelated to any known Indo-European family, indicating that Minoan civilization developed independently of the cultural traditions that dominated mainland Europe and Asia. Minoan maritime technology enabled commercial networks that extended from the Black Sea to the Atlantic coast of Spain, creating the Bronze Age Mediterranean's most extensive trading system. Harbor installations at Kamos show sophisticated port facilities with stone quays, warehouses, and ship maintenance areas that could accommodate vessels up to 20 meters in length. These ships, reconstructed from artistic depictions and archaeological remains, featured deep keels for stability in rough seas, square sails for long-distance travel, and banks of oars for maneuvering in harbors and during calm conditions. Trade goods from Minoan contexts demonstrate the civilization's commercial reach and the diversity of products that flowed through Cretan ports. Amber from the Baltic region, tin from Cornwall and Central Europe, ivory from Africa, and lapis lazuli from Afghanistan appear in Minoan archaeological sites, indicating trade relationships that spanned the known world. Minoan exports included high-quality pottery, bronze weapons and tools, textiles dyed with expensive purple myrex shells, and agricultural products like olive oil and wine that commanded premium prices in foreign markets. The palace at Baistos, located in south-central Crete, reveals architectural innovations that adapted palace design principles to different topographical conditions, while maintaining consistent administrative functions. Built on a hilltop overlooking the Mazara Plain, Baistos featured terrace construction that followed natural contours, while providing defensive advantages and impressive visual impact. The palace's grand staircase, carved from local limestone and measuring 14 meters in width, created ceremonial approaches that emphasized royal authority while accommodating large gatherings for religious or administrative purposes. Storage facilities at Baistos included specialized areas for different product types, with separate magazines for liquid storage, grain storage, and craft materials. Bronze working areas within the palace complex contained furnaces, molds, and tool collections that demonstrate local metal production capabilities. The discovery of copper ingots marked with Minoan symbols indicates systematic quality control and standardized production methods that supported both local consumption and export trade. Minoan religious practices, reconstructed from artistic depictions and archaeological evidence, emphasized nature worship and female deities that contrasted with the male-dominated pantheons of contemporary civilizations. The famous snake goddess figurines from Knossos show elaborately dressed female figures holding serpents, possibly representing earth or fertility goddesses central to Minoan religious beliefs. Bull-leaping frescoes depict young men and women performing acrobatic feats with live bulls, suggesting religious ceremonies that combined athletic skill with ritual significance. Sacred caves throughout Crete served as religious centers where Minoans deposited bronze weapons, jewelry, and ceramic vessels as offerings to their deities. The Dictaean Cave, legendary birthplace of Zeus in later Greek mythology, contains Bronze Age deposits spanning over 1,000 years, indicating continuous religious use throughout Minoan civilization. These offerings include miniature bronze double axes, sacred symbols that appear throughout Minoan art and architecture, suggesting religious continuity that transcended political changes. Urban planning at Minoan settlements beyond the major palaces demonstrates sophisticated understanding of community organization and public health principles. The town of Gurnia, excavated in the early 20th century, shows carefully planned streets with stone paving, standardized housing units, and centralized craft production areas. Bronze working shops, pottery kilns, and textile production facilities were positioned to minimize fire hazards, while maintaining efficient workflows that supported both local consumption and export production. Minoan influence throughout the Eastern Mediterranean appears in artistic styles, architectural techniques, and technological innovations that spread through trade contacts and cultural exchange. Frescoes at Tel El Dubai in Egypt show distinctly Minoan artistic styles, possibly created by Cretan artists working at foreign courts or by local artists trained in Minoan techniques. Bronze weapons and tools found throughout the indicating either direct export of Cretan products or local production using Minoan technological knowledge. The mysterious collapse of Minoan civilization around 1450 BC remains one of archaeology's most debated questions, with evidence supporting multiple possible explanations that may have operated simultaneously. The massive volcanic eruption at Thera around 1500 BC created tsunamis and ashfalls that devastated northern Crete, destroying coastal settlements and disrupting agricultural production. Geological evidence shows ash deposits up to 10 centimeters thick at Minoan sites, indicating environmental damage that would have required years or decades for recovery. Archaeological evidence from Knossos and other palace sites shows destruction layers containing burned debris, collapsed walls, and scattered artifacts that suggest violent conquest rather than natural disaster. Bronze weapons and arrowheads found in destruction contexts indicate military conflict, possibly involving Mycenaean Greeks, who subsequently occupied Cretan palaces and adapted Linear A script to write Greek language in Linear B tablets. The transition from Minoan to Mycenaean control appears to have occurred rapidly, with new architectural styles and administrative practices appearing immediately after the destruction levels. Internal social conflicts may have weakened Minoan resistance to external threats or natural disasters, creating conditions that enabled the civilization's rapid collapse. Evidence for social tension includes destruction of rural villas, abandonment of smaller settlements, and concentration of population in fortified positions that suggest internal warfare or social breakdown. The absence of obvious defensive walls around major Minoan centers indicates that the civilization developed during periods of relative peace but lacked military preparations for sustained conflict. Mycenaean civilization emerged on the Greek mainland around 1600 BC, developing from earlier Bronze Age cultures through contact with Minoan technology and possible population movements from Anatolia or the Balkans. The earliest Mycenaean sites show distinctive burial practices, including shaft graves containing bronze weapons, gold ornaments, and ceramic vessels that demonstrate wealth accumulation and social stratification. Grave Circle A at Mycenae, dating to 1600 to 1500 BC, contained burials with gold face masks, bronze daggers inlaid with precious metals, and imported luxury goods that indicate extensive trade relationships and accumulated wealth. Mycenaean palace architecture adapted Minoan design principles to mainland Greek conditions, while incorporating distinctive features that reflected different social and military priorities. The palace at Pylos, excavated by Carl Blegen in the 1930s, featured a central Megron hall measuring 13 by 11 meters, with a circular hearth surrounded by 4 columns supporting a clerestory roof that provided light and ventilation. This architectural form, unknown in Minoan palaces, became the standard design for Mycenaean royal residences and influenced later Greek temple architecture. Fortification systems at Mycenaean sites demonstrate military concerns that were largely absent from Minoan civilization, reflecting different geopolitical conditions on the fragmented Greek mainland. The walls at Mycenae, constructed from massive limestone blocks weighing up to 20 tons each, employed Cyclopean masonry techniques that created virtually impregnable defenses. The Lion Gate, the main entrance to the citadel, features a relieving triangle decorated with carved lions that proclaimed royal authority, while demonstrating sophisticated engineering that distributed structural loads to prevent collapse. Linear Burrow script, deciphered by Michael Ventris in 1952, provides detailed insight into Mycenaean administrative systems and social organization through thousands of clay tablets from Pylos, Knossos, and other palace sites. These records document complex bureaucratic hierarchies that managed agricultural production, craft specialization, military organization, and religious activities across territories encompassing hundreds of square kilometers. The tablets record personnel assignments, resource allocations, and tribute assessments that demonstrate systematic governmental control over diverse economic activities. Mycenaean military organization, reconstructed from Linear B records and archaeological evidence, created professional warrior classes equipped with standardized bronze weapons and armor. Tablets from Pylos document military units organized by geographic regions, with specific numbers of chariots, infantry, and support personnel assigned to each district. Bronze weapons from Mycenaean contexts include long swords, designed for slashing attacks, spears with reinforced sockets, and body armor, constructed from bronze plates sewn onto leather backing. Chariot warfare dominated Mycenaean military tactics, with elite warriors fighting from two-wheeled vehicles drawn by specially trained horses. Archaeological remains of chariots from chamber tombs show sophisticated construction using bronze fittings, leather components, and wooden frameworks that balance durability with speed and maneuverability. Linear B tablets record chariot inventories, maintenance requirements, and personnel assignments that indicate systematic military organization comparable to contemporary Near Eastern armies. Trade relationships established by Mycenaean merchants extended throughout the Mediterranean, creating commercial networks that distributed Greek products while importing raw materials and luxury goods. Mycenaean pottery appears at archaeological sites from Sicily to the Levant, indicating regular commercial contact that supplemented local production with specialized Greek ceramics. Bronze weapons and tools of Mycenaean manufacture have been found throughout the eastern Mediterranean, suggesting export of military equipment to foreign markets. The palace at Tiryns, with walls measuring up to 17 meters in thickness, demonstrates Mycenaean engineering capabilities applied to defensive architecture. Internal galleries within the walls provided protected movement routes and storage areas that could sustain sieges lasting months or years. The palace's water supply system included underground cisterns and protected access routes to external springs that ensured survival during extended blockades. Mycenaean religious practices, documented in Linear B tablets and archaeological evidence, combined indigenous Greek traditions with influences from Minoan and Near Eastern cultures. Tablets from Pilus record offerings to deities including Poseidon, Zeus, and Hera, indicating religious continuity that connected Mycenaean beliefs with later classical Greek religion. Religious ceremonies included animal sacrifices, processions, and festivals that required coordination of personnel and resources across multiple administrative districts. Warrior burials throughout the Mycenaean world demonstrate the civilization's military values and social hierarchies based on combat prowess and martial achievement. Chamber tombs at Mycenae contain bronze weapons, armor, and horse equipment that indicate warrior status, while grave goods reflect individual military accomplishments and social rank. The famous warrior vase from Mycenae depicts armed soldiers in standardized equipment marching in formation, suggesting military organization and training that created effective fighting forces. The Bronze Age collapse around 1200 BC devastated Mycenaean civilization through a combination of factors that remain incompletely understood despite extensive archaeological investigation. Destruction layers at major Mycenaean sites contain burned debris, collapsed structures, and evidence of violent conflict that suggests military conquest or internal warfare. The timing of these destructions, occurring within a few decades across multiple sites, indicates coordinated attacks or widespread social breakdown rather than isolated local conflicts. Sea peoples mentioned in Egyptian records from this period appear to have played significant roles in Bronze Age Mediterranean disruptions, possibly including attacks on Mycenaean territories. Egyptian inscriptions describe naval battles and land campaigns against confederations of foreign peoples whose origins and motivations remain disputed among scholars. Archaeological evidence for population movements and cultural changes throughout the eastern Mediterranean supports theories of large-scale migrations or invasions that disrupted established political systems. Climate change during the late 13th and early 12th centuries BC may have created agricultural crises that weakened Mycenaean society and contributed to political instability. Paleoclimatic evidence indicates cooling temperatures and reduced rainfall that would have decreased agricultural productivity throughout the eastern Mediterranean. These environmental pressures could have triggered population movements, resource conflicts, and social tensions that made Mycenaean civilization vulnerable to external attacks or internal collapse. The transition to the Greek Dark Ages following Mycenaean collapse involved dramatic population decline, technological regression, and cultural simplification that lasted approximately 400 years. Archaeological evidence shows abandonment of major settlements, cessation of monumental construction, and loss of literacy as linear B script disappeared from use. Bronze working continued at reduced levels, but the sophisticated administrative systems, international trade networks, and military organizations that characterize Mycenaean civilization vanished almost completely, creating conditions that required centuries of gradual recovery and cultural redevelopment. While Mycenaean warriors clashed with bronze swords across the Aegean and Egyptian pharaohs commanded vast armies along the Nile, a remarkably different Bronze Age civilization flourished across the vast river plains of the Indus Valley in present-day Pakistan and northwestern India. The Harappan civilization, named after its first excavated site discovered in 1921, developed urban planning principles and technological innovations that in many ways surpassed their contemporary civilizations, yet left behind one of archaeology's most enduring mysteries through their undeciphered script and enigmatic disappearance. The twin cities of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, separated by over 600 kilometers along the Indus River, demonstrate unprecedented standardization in urban planning that suggests centralized authority coordinating construction across vast distances. Mohenjo-Daro, covering approximately 250 hectares at its peak around 2500 BC, housed an estimated 40,000 inhabitants within a carefully planned grid system of streets running precisely north-south and east-west. The main thoroughfares measured 10 meters in width, wide enough for 2 ox-drawn carts to pass comfortably, while secondary streets maintained consistent widths of 3 to 4 meters throughout the city. The city's most remarkable feature was its sophisticated drainage system, unmatched by any contemporary civilization and not equaled in the Indian subcontinent until British colonial engineering projects 4,000 years later. Every house connected to covered drains constructed from precisely fitted baked bricks, with manholes positioned at regular intervals for maintenance access. The main sewers, measuring up to 2 meters in height and 1.5 meters in width, carried wastewater to collection points outside the city walls, where it was processed through settling tanks before final disposal. Individual houses at Mohenjo-Daro featured private wells, bathrooms with waterproof floors, and sophisticated drainage connections that maintained sanitary conditions for dense urban populations. The Great Bath, measuring 12 by 7 meters and 2.4 meters deep, demonstrates advanced hydraulic engineering with waterproof bitumen lining and precise inflow and outflow systems that maintained water levels while preventing contamination. This structure, possibly used for religious purification ceremonies, required mathematical calculations and construction techniques that coordinated multiple specialized craft teams. Standardization extended beyond urban planning to encompass weights, measures, and construction materials used throughout Harappan territory. Excavations at over 1,500 Harappan sites have revealed identical brick proportions, maintaining a precise 4:1 ratio of length to width to height, indicating centralized production standards enforced across the entire civilization. These bricks, fired in kilns reaching temperatures of 900 to 1,000 degrees Celsius, achieved durability that has preserved Harappan structures for over 4,000 years in the challenging monsoon climate of the subcontinent. The Harappan weight system employed a binary progression based on units of 16, with standard weights ranging from 0.05 g to 11 kilograms manufactured from precisely shaped stone cubes. These weights, found in identical forms from Afghanistan to Gujarat, enabled standardized commercial transactions across the civilization's extensive trade networks. Bronze merchant scales discovered at multiple sites feature suspension systems and balance mechanisms that achieved accuracy comparable to modern precision instruments, demonstrating mathematical and engineering knowledge applied to practical commercial requirements. Harappan bronzeworking achieved technical excellence through sophisticated alloying techniques that produced tools and weapons superior to contemporary products from Mesopotamia and Egypt. Chemical analysis of bronze artifacts reveals deliberate tin concentrations optimized for specific applications, with cutting tools containing 10 to 12% tin for maximum hardness, while decorative objects use 6 to 8% tin for enhanced workability. The bronze dancing girl from Mohenjo-Daro, measuring only 10.5 centimeters in height, displays remarkable anatomical accuracy and artistic sophistication achieved through lost wax casting techniques that required precise temperature control and timing. Jewelry production at Harappan sites demonstrates advanced metallurgical skills, combined with artistic sensibilities that created ornaments of exceptional beauty and technical complexity. Gold and silver beads from cemetery contexts show sophisticated granulation techniques, where tiny metal spheres were fused to base surfaces without melting the underlying material, requiring precise temperature control achievable only through extensive experience and specialized equipment. Bronze bangles, rings, and pendants feature intricate geometric patterns created through techniques including repousse, chasing, and filigree work that demanded years of training to master. The famous Harappan seals, over 4,000 of which have been discovered, represent masterpieces of miniature art and precision craftsmanship carved from steatite, a soft stone that hardened when heated. These square seals, typically measuring 2 to 3 centimeters per side, feature animal motifs including unicorns, bulls, elephants, and rhinoceros, executed with naturalistic detail that demonstrates careful observation of animal anatomy and behavior. The reverse sides contain raised bosses with holes for cord attachment, indicating their use in commercial transactions for marking ownership or authenticity of trade goods. Harappan trade networks extended from Central Asia to the Arabian Peninsula, creating commercial relationships that distributed Indus Valley products throughout the Bronze Age world, while importing raw materials unavailable in the River Valley region. Harappan seals and pottery have been discovered at Mesopotamian sites including Uar and Susa, while Mesopotamian cylinder seals appear in Harappan contexts, indicating regular commercial exchange between these distant civilizations. The discovery of a Harappan dock at Lethal in Gujarat, complete with tidal locks and warehouse facilities, demonstrates sophisticated understanding of maritime engineering applied to international trade operations. Raw materials imported through these trade networks included tin from Afghanistan or Central Asia, essential for bronze production, gold from Karnataka in southern India, silver from Afghanistan, and precious stones including lapis lazuli from Badakhshan and turquoise from Iran. Harappan merchants established trading posts throughout this network, creating commercial infrastructure that supported regular exchange relationships lasting several centuries. The standardization of Harappan weights and measures throughout this network indicates the civilization's commercial influence extended far beyond its political boundaries. The Indus script remains one of archaeology's greatest unsolved puzzles, despite intensive research efforts spanning nearly a century. Over 4,000 inscribed objects have been recovered, containing approximately 400 distinct signs used in various combinations to create texts averaging 4 to 5 signs in length. The script appears on seals, pottery, bronze implements, and stone tablets, suggesting widespread literacy among at least the merchant and administrative classes. Statistical analysis indicates the script was logosyllabic, combining pictographic symbols representing whole words with phonetic signs representing syllables or sounds. Attempts to decipher the Indus script have proposed connections to Dravidian languages of southern India, Indo-European languages, or completely unknown linguistic families that disappeared with the civilization's collapse. The absence of bilingual inscriptions, which enabled the decipherment of Egyptian hieroglyphs and Mesopotamian cuneiform, has prevented breakthrough progress despite sophisticated computer analysis and statistical modeling. Some scholars argue that the script represents a proto-writing system, used primarily for administrative record-keeping rather than full linguistic expression, which would explain the brief inscription lengths and limited sign combinations. Archaeological evidence suggests Harappan society was remarkably egalitarian compared to contemporary civilizations, with minimal evidence for the extreme social stratification that characterized Egypt and Mesopotamia. Residential architecture at Harappan sites shows variation in house sizes, but lacks the massive palaces or monumental tombs that marked elite residences elsewhere. The larger structures, including the Great Bath at Mohenjo-Daro and similar complexes at other sites, appear to have served public or religious functions rather than private elite consumption. Cemetery evidence supports interpretations of relatively egalitarian social organization, with burial goods showing modest variation in quantity and quality, rather than the extreme disparities found in contemporary Egyptian or Mesopotamian royal burials. Harappan graves typically contained pottery vessels, bronze ornaments, and personal items, but lacked the massive accumulations of wealth that accompanied elite burials elsewhere. This pattern suggests that while social differentiation certainly existed, it operated within narrower parameters that prevented extreme concentration of wealth and power. Religious practices reconstructed from archaeological evidence emphasize fertility, water, and animal symbolism that may have centered on goddess worship and natural forces. The numerous female figurines found throughout Harappan sites, often showing elaborate headdresses and jewelry, possibly represent mother goddesses or fertility deities central to Harappan religious beliefs. Fire altars discovered at several sites suggest ritual practices involving burnt offerings, while the Great Bath and similar structures at other cities indicate ceremonial bathing played important roles in religious observances. The famous priest-king sculpture from Mohenjo-Daro, despite its misleading modern name, likely represents a religious figure rather than a political ruler based on its iconography and archaeological context. The figure wears a robe decorated with trefoil patterns and a headband, with eyes that appear half-closed in meditation or trance states. The sculpture's artistic style emphasizes spiritual rather than martial qualities, contrasting with contemporary royal imagery from Egypt and Mesopotamia that emphasized military power and divine kingship. Harappan agricultural systems supported large urban populations through sophisticated irrigation techniques and crop diversification that maximized productivity from monsoon-dependent agriculture. Archaeological evidence indicates cultivation of wheat, barley, peas, sesame, and cotton, with crop rotation systems that maintained soil fertility while providing diverse food supplies. The early cultivation of cotton, evidenced by textile impressions on pottery and bronze implements, gave Harappan merchants valuable trade goods that commanded premium prices in foreign markets where cotton was unknown. Water management extended beyond urban drainage systems to encompass regional irrigation networks that channeled monsoon runoff and river water to agricultural areas. The dam at Dhalavira in Gujarat, constructed from dressed stone blocks and measuring over 260 meters in length, created water storage capacity that supported agricultural production during dry seasons. This engineering achievement required surveying skills, mathematical calculations, and construction techniques that coordinated labor from multiple communities over several construction seasons. Craft specialization at Harappan sites created distinct production quarters where skilled artisans manufactured goods for both local consumption and export trade. Bronze working areas at Harappa and Shanhadaro contained furnaces, crucibles, and tool collections that indicate systematic metal production using standardized techniques and quality control measures. Pottery production employed potter's wheels and kilns that achieved uniform firing temperatures, creating ceramics with consistent quality and distinctive decorative styles that identified Harappan products throughout trade networks. Bead production represented a major Harappan industry, with specialized workshops at Shanhadaro and Lothal producing ornaments from carnelian, agate, jasper, and other semi-precious stones. The technical processes involved cutting, drilling, and polishing techniques that created beads with perfectly circular holes and polished surfaces that required specialized tools and extensive skill. Harappan beads have been found throughout the ancient world from Mesopotamian royal burials to Egyptian tomb contexts, indicating their high value and widespread demand. The gradual decline of Harappan civilization between 1900 and 1300 BC remains as mysterious as the script, with multiple theories proposed to explain the disappearance of one of the world's most sophisticated Bronze Age societies. Archaeological evidence shows progressive abandonment of major cities, with later occupation levels displaying declining construction quality, reduced urban planning, and simplified material culture that suggests social and economic deterioration over several centuries. Climate change theories propose that shifting monsoon patterns reduced agricultural productivity and undermined the economic foundations of Harappan society. Paleoclimatic evidence indicates increasing aridity in the Indus region during the 2nd millennium BC, with reduced rainfall that would have stressed agricultural systems dependent on predictable monsoon cycles. Geological studies of ancient river courses show that the Sarasvati River, which supported numerous Harappan settlements, began drying up around 1900 BC due to tectonic changes that diverted its water sources. River course alterations affected multiple Harappan settlements as the Indus River changed its channel, stranding cities that depended on riverine transport and water supply. Archaeological evidence shows that several major sites, including Harappa itself, experienced flooding followed by channel abandonment that disrupted trade routes and urban water systems. These hydrological changes would have required massive population relocations and economic reorganization that may have exceeded the civilization's adaptive capacity. Invasion theories, while less popular among contemporary scholars, point to evidence for destruction and cultural change that suggests external conquest or population movements. The discovery of unburied skeletons at Mohenjo-Daro, some showing evidence of violent death, has been interpreted as evidence for military conflict, though alternative explanations including disease or natural disasters remain possible. Changes in pottery styles, architectural techniques, and settlement patterns during the decline period indicate cultural influences that may reflect new populations or change political conditions. Internal social conflicts may have contributed to Harappan decline through resource competition, political fragmentation, or religious changes that undermined social cohesion. The absence of obvious defensive fortifications at major Harappan sites suggests the civilization developed during periods of relative peace, but may have lacked military institutions capable of responding to external threats or internal conflicts. Evidence for craft production decline and reduced trade activity indicates economic problems that could have triggered social instability and political breakdown. The legacy of Harappan civilization persisted through technological innovations, agricultural techniques, and possibly religious traditions that influenced subsequent cultures in the Indian subcontinent. Archaeological evidence suggests continuity in pottery traditions, urban planning concepts, and water management techniques that connected Harappan achievements with later Indian civilizations. The sophisticated understanding of hydraulic engineering, standardized production methods, and international trade networks established by Harappan merchants created foundations for commercial and technological development that continued long after the civilization's political collapse. While Harappan merchants conducted their trade networks across the Arabian Sea and Mesopotamian scribes recorded administrative details on cuneiform tablets, an entirely separate Bronze Age civilization was emerging along the Yellow River Valley in northern China. This civilization would develop distinctive metallurgical traditions, writing systems, and political concepts that remained fundamentally isolated from Western Eurasian developments until much later periods, creating a parallel trajectory of Bronze Age innovation that produced technologies and social institutions uniquely adapted to East Asian conditions. The legendary Xia dynasty, traditionally dated from 2070 to 1600 BC in Chinese historical records, represents China's earliest Bronze Age political entity, though its historical existence remained disputed until archaeological discoveries at Erlitou in Hunan province provided compelling evidence for a sophisticated early Bronze Age culture that corresponds chronologically with traditional Xia dating. Excavations at Erlitou, conducted since the 1950s, have revealed a massive urban center covering over 300 hectares that flourished between 1900 and 1500 BC, featuring monumental architecture, bronze production facilities, and evidence for centralized political authority that supports identification with the legendary First Dynasty. The palace complex at Erlitou, designated Palace 1 by archaeologists, measures 108 meters in length and 100 meters in width, constructed on a raised platform that elevated royal residences above the surrounding settlement. The building's timber frame construction employed mortise and tenon joinery techniques that created flexible structures capable of withstanding seismic activity common in the region. Foundation stones, precisely cut and positioned, supported wooden columns arranged in regular intervals that divided interior spaces into ceremonial halls, private apartments, and administrative offices. The palace's orientation, aligned with cardinal directions, established architectural principles that would influence Chinese imperial construction for over 3,000 years. Bronze production at Erlitou demonstrates sophisticated metallurgical knowledge adapted to local or sources and technological traditions that developed independently of Western Eurasian techniques. Chinese bronze workers employed piece mold casting methods that differed fundamentally from the lost wax techniques prevalent in Mesopotamia and the Eastern Mediterranean. This process involved creating ceramic molds composed of multiple interlocking sections that could be disassembled after casting, allowing production of complex vessels with intricate surface decorations that would have been impossible using other contemporary methods. The bronze ritual vessels discovered at Erlitou represent the earliest examples of ceremonial bronzes that would become central to Chinese religious and political practices throughout the Bronze Age and beyond. These vessels, including ding tripods for cooking sacrificial meat and GI bowls for serving grain offerings, feature distinctive forms that reflect indigenous Chinese ceramic traditions adapted to bronze production. The largest ding from Erlitou measures 100 centimeters in height and weighs over 200 kilograms, requiring coordinated efforts from multiple craftsmen and sophisticated foundry operations that could handle large quantities of molten bronze. Chemical analysis of Erlitou bronzes reveals tin concentrations averaging 18 20% significantly higher than optimal ratios for tools or weapons, but ideal for creating resonant musical instruments and vessels with distinctive golden coloration. This deliberate alloying choice indicates that Chinese metallurgists prioritized acoustic and aesthetic qualities over functional hardness, reflecting cultural values that emphasized ceremonial display and ritual performance rather than purely utilitarian applications. The high tin content also improved casting characteristics, reducing porosity and surface defects in complex vessel forms. Turquoise workshops at Erlitou produced elaborate ornaments using sophisticated lapidary techniques that shaped, polished, and assembled thousands of stones into complex decorative patterns. The dragon-shaped ornament discovered in Tomb M3 contains over 2,000 individual turquoise pieces, each measuring less than 5 millimeters, assembled with bronze wire and organic adhesives to create a flexible decorative object measuring 70 centimeters in length. This level of craftsmanship required specialized tools, precise measurement techniques, and artistic vision that coordinated color gradations and geometric patterns across the entire composition. Jade working at Erlitou reached unprecedented levels of sophistication through the development of specialized cutting and polishing techniques that exploited jade's unique physical properties. Chinese craftsmen discovered that jade's extreme hardness could be overcome through patient abrasion using bamboo tools charged with quartz sand, creating cutting edges capable of precise shaping without fracturing the stone. Ritual jade objects from Erlitou tombs include ceremonial axes, curved knives, and geometric ornaments that demonstrate mathematical precision in their proportional relationships and surface decorations. The transition from the Xia to the Shang dynasty around 1600 BC marked a significant expansion in Bronze Age Chinese civilization, with archaeological evidence from sites like Zhengzhou and Anyang revealing increasingly complex urban centers, sophisticated bronze production, and the development of China's earliest confirmed writing system. The Shang capital at Anyang, occupied from approximately 1250 to 1046 BC, covered over 25 square kilometers and housed an estimated 120,000 inhabitants, making it one of the world's largest Bronze Age urban centers. Royal tombs at Anyang demonstrate the extreme social stratification that characterized mature Shang society, with massive burial complexes requiring coordinated labor from hundreds of workers over multiple construction seasons. The tomb of Lady Fu Hao, discovered intact in 1976, contained over 1,600 burial goods, including 468 bronze objects, 755 jade artifacts, and nearly 7,000 cowrie shells used as currency. The tomb's contents represent wealth equivalent to several years of agricultural production from thousands of farming families, indicating unprecedented concentration of resources under royal control. Bronze ritual vessels from Fu Hao's tomb showcase the artistic and technical achievements of Shang metal workers, featuring complex decorative programs that combine zoomorphic motifs with geometric patterns and compositions of remarkable sophistication. The tomb's bronze ding vessels range from small ceremonial pieces weighing less than 1 kilogram to massive tripods exceeding 100 kilograms, all cast using piece mold techniques that achieved surface details measuring less than 1 millimeter in depth. Decorative elements include Taotai masks, dragon motifs, and geometric patterns that required precise registration between multiple mold sections to achieve continuous designs across vessel surfaces. Oracle bone script, discovered in 1899 at Anyang, represents China's earliest confirmed writing system and provides detailed insight into Shang religious practices, political organization, and daily life through over 150,000 inscribed fragments. These divination records, carved on turtle plastrons and ox scapulae, document royal consultations with ancestral spirits regarding military campaigns, agricultural activities, weather patterns, and ceremonial requirements. The script employs approximately 4,500 distinct characters, of which about 1,500 have been successfully deciphered, revealing direct connections to modern Chinese writing that demonstrate remarkable cultural continuity spanning over 3,000 years. Divination procedures recorded on oracle bones involved heating the prepared bones until thermal stress created characteristic crack patterns that trained specialists interpreted as spiritual responses to royal inquiries. The process required careful preparation of bone surfaces, precise placement of heating points, and systematic recording of questions, predictions, and outcomes that created comprehensive archives of royal decision-making. These records reveal that Shang kings consulted oracles regarding virtually all important governmental activities, indicating religious worldviews that integrated spiritual guidance with practical administration. Military organization under Shang rule created professional armies equipped with standardized bronze weapons and supported by sophisticated logistic systems that enabled sustained campaigns across northern China. Oracle bone records document military units numbering in the thousands, with specific references to chariot forces, infantry formations, and specialized troops including archers and siege specialists. Shang armies employed horse-drawn chariots that provided battlefield mobility and psychological advantages over infantry-based opponents, with archaeological evidence showing standardized chariot construction using bronze fittings and specialized harness systems. Bronze weapons from Shang military contexts demonstrate advanced metallurgical techniques adapted to Chinese warfare requirements, including dagger axes that combined thrusting and slashing capabilities in single integrated weapons. These distinctive Chinese weapon forms, unknown elsewhere in the Bronze Age world, featured bronze heads mounted perpendicular to wooden shafts through sophisticated socket designs that prevented breakage during combat. Shang bronze swords, while less common than dagger axes, show blade lengths approaching 60 centimeters with reinforced tangs that supported effective slashing attacks. Shang bronzeworking reached unprecedented scales of production through workshop complexes that employed hundreds of specialized craftsmen in coordinated manufacturing operations. The bronze foundry area at Anyang covered over 10,000 square meters and contained more than 30 furnaces capable of melting bronze in quantities exceeding 1,000 kilograms per casting session. Archaeological evidence shows systematic organization with separate areas for mold preparation, metal smelting, casting operations, and finishing work that created assembly line production methods adapted to large-scale ceremonial vessel manufacture. Quality control measures in Shang bronze production included standardized alloy compositions, dimensional specifications, and decorative programs that ensured consistency across multiple production batches. Chemical analysis reveals that Shang foundries maintained tin concentrations within narrow ranges specific to vessel types, with cooking vessels containing 15 to 18% tin, while wine containers used 20 to 22% tin for enhanced acoustic properties. This precision indicates systematic testing procedures and accumulated metallurgical knowledge that enabled predictable results from complex casting operations. Agricultural innovations during the Shang period included bronze farming tools that increased productivity while supporting larger populations and more complex social hierarchies. Bronze plowshares, sickles, and hoes from Shang contexts show design improvements over earlier stone and wooden implements, with curved cutting edges and reinforced mounting systems that reduce tool failure during intensive use. Agricultural records on oracle bones document systematic crop rotation, irrigation management, and harvest scheduling that maximized yields from intensive cultivation systems. The Zhou conquest of the Shang around 1046 BC initiated China's longest-lasting dynasty and introduced political concepts that would influence Chinese governmental theory for over 2,000 years. Zhou military success resulted from superior bronze weaponry, cavalry tactics, and strategic alliances with Shang, subject peoples who provided local knowledge and additional military forces. Archaeological evidence from Zhou sites shows rapid adoption of Shang bronze working techniques, combined with innovations in weapon design and production methods that enhanced military effectiveness. The Mandate of Heaven concept, developed by Zhou political theorists to justify their conquest of the Shang, established principles of legitimate rulership based on moral virtue and effective governance, rather than hereditary succession alone. According to this theory, heaven granted authority to rulers who maintained social harmony, promoted agricultural prosperity, and conducted appropriate ritual observances while withdrawing support from corrupt or incompetent dynasties. This ideological framework provided justification for political change while establishing performance standards that constrained royal behavior throughout subsequent Chinese history. Zhou feudalism created hierarchical political structures that distributed land and authority among noble families in exchange for military service and tribute obligations. Bronze ritual vessels served as symbols of feudal rank and political authority, with vessel types and decorative programs indicating specific positions within the Zhou hierarchy. Archaeological evidence shows regional variations in bronze styles that reflect local political autonomy within the broader Zhou system, creating cultural diversity while maintaining overall political unity. Zhou bronze technology incorporated innovations that improved both functional performance and ceremonial significance of metal objects. New alloy compositions reduced tin content in utilitarian items while maintaining high concentrations in ritual vessels, creating cost efficiencies that supported expanded bronze production. Decorative techniques included inlay work using gold, silver, and copper that created polychrome effects impossible with single alloy casting, demonstrating artistic sophistication that enhanced the ceremonial impact of ritual bronzes. Zhou workshop organization expanded production capacity through regional specialization that concentrated specific craft activities in locations with optimal resource access or technical expertise. Bronze production centers at Homa in Shaanxi province employed thousands of workers in coordinated operations that supplied ceremonial vessels throughout Zhou territory. Archaeological evidence shows systematic quality control, standardized production methods, and efficient distribution networks that maintained consistent artistic and technical standards across vast geographical areas. Musical instruments represented major innovations in Zhou bronze working, with bells, chimes, and other acoustic devices demonstrating sophisticated understanding of metallurgical acoustics and musical theory. Zhou bronze bells employed precise tuning techniques that created specific pitch relationships through controlled wall thickness, internal cavity dimensions, and alloy compositions. Sets of graduated bells enabled complex musical performances that accompanied state ceremonies and religious rituals, creating auditory experiences that reinforced political authority through sensory impact. Ancestor worship practices during the Zhou period elevated bronze ritual vessels to central positions in religious observances that connected living rulers with deceased predecessors through ceremonial feeding and offering rituals. Bronze ding, gi, and other vessel types served specific functions in elaborate ceremonies that required precise ritual knowledge and expensive ceremonial equipment. These practices created demand for high-quality bronze vessels that supported extensive craft production while reinforcing social hierarchies through differential access to ceremonial materials. State ceremonies during the Zhou period employed bronze ritual vessels in complex performances that demonstrated royal authority while maintaining spiritual relationships with ancestral powers and natural forces. Archaeological evidence from ceremonial sites shows standardized vessel arrangements, specific offering procedures, and coordinated musical performances that created multimedia religious experiences. These ceremonies required extensive preparation, specialized personnel, and expensive materials that demonstrated state resources while reinforcing political legitimacy through religious validation. The ceremonial bronze vessels of Zhou China resonated with musical precision across palace courtyards while European metallurgists were developing their own distinctive approaches to bronze working, creating technological traditions that would spread across the continent through networks of trade, migration, and cultural exchange. The bell beaker culture, emerging around 2800 BC and flourishing until approximately 1800 BC, represents one of Europe's earliest widespread Bronze Age phenomena, characterized by distinctive pottery styles, copper and bronze metallurgy, and burial practices that appear across vast distances from the Iberian Peninsula to Central Europe. Bell beaker sites demonstrate sophisticated understanding of copper smelting and bronze production, adapted to European sources and technological conditions. The settlement at Los Molares in southeastern Spain features copper production facilities dating to 2700 BC, including furnaces capable of reaching temperatures exceeding 1,100 degrees Celsius through the use of bellows systems operated by teams of specialized workers. These installations processed copper ores from nearby mines, using techniques that extracted metal with remarkable efficiency, creating the raw materials for tools, weapons, and ornaments that spread throughout bell beaker networks. The distinctive bell-shaped pottery vessels that give this culture its archaeological designation show remarkable standardization across enormous geographical distances, suggesting shared cultural traditions and possibly coordinated production systems. Chemical analysis of bell beaker pottery from sites in Portugal, France, Germany, and Central Europe reveals consistent tempering agents and firing techniques that indicate systematic knowledge transfer between distant communities. These vessels, often found in burial contexts alongside copper daggers and archery equipment, suggest ceremonial or status-related functions that connected material culture with social identity. Copper daggers from bell beaker contexts demonstrate early European metallurgical expertise applied to weapon production, featuring blade lengths averaging 12 to 18 centimeters with carefully shaped tangs for handle attachment. The Amesbury archer, discovered near Stonehenge and dating to approximately 2300 BC, was buried with 5 copper knives and gold ornaments that originated in continental Europe, indicating extensive trade networks that distributed metal objects and raw materials across the English Channel. Isotope analysis of the archer's teeth suggests he originated in the Alpine region, demonstrating individual mobility that accompanied technological diffusion. Archery equipment associated with bell beaker culture includes distinctive stone wrist guards that protected archers from bowstring impact during shooting, found in standardized forms from Scotland to Sicily. These perforated stone plaques, carefully shaped and polished, demonstrate specialized craft production adapted to specific functional requirements. Associated arrowheads, manufactured from flint and occasionally copper, show consistent design characteristics that suggest shared hunting and warfare techniques across bell beaker territories. Gold ornaments from bell beaker contexts, including hair ornaments, Earrings and decorative discs represent Europe's earlier systematic gold working and demonstrate access to precious metal sources in Ireland, Wales, and Central Europe. The mold cape, discovered in Wales and dating to approximately 1900 BC, consists of a sheet gold garment decorated with intricate repoussé patterns that required sophisticated hammering techniques and artistic vision. This remarkable artifact, weighing over 550 grams of pure gold, demonstrates wealth accumulation and craft specialization that supported luxury production for elite consumption. The spread of bell beaker culture across Europe coincided with significant population movements and cultural changes that introduced new burial practices, settlement patterns, and technological innovations to previously Neolithic communities. DNA analysis of bell beaker burials reveals genetic signatures consistent with population movements from the Iberian Peninsula and Central Europe, suggesting that cultural diffusion involved actual migration rather than simple technology transfer. These movements appear to have introduced Indo-European languages to many regions of Europe, creating linguistic foundations that persist in modern European language families. Metallurgical innovations during the bell beaker period included improved smelting techniques that increased copper extraction efficiency while reducing fuel consumption. Experimental archaeology has demonstrated that bell beaker furnaces could process 2 to 3 kilograms of copper ore per firing session, producing approximately 200 to 400 grams of pure metal through single operations. These quantities enabled production of multiple tools or weapons from individual smelting episodes, supporting craft specialization and trade relationships that distributed metal objects throughout bell beaker networks. The Nordic Bronze Age, flourishing in Denmark and southern Sweden from approximately 1700 to 500 BC, developed distinctive cultural characteristics that combined local traditions with influences from Central European Bronze Age cultures. Archaeological evidence from sites like Trindholm and Kivik demonstrates sophisticated bronze working techniques adapted to Scandinavian conditions, creating artistic and technological achievements that rivaled contemporary developments in Central and Southern Europe. The region's abundant bog deposits have preserved organic materials that provide exceptional insight into Nordic Bronze Age life, including textiles, wooden objects, and human remains that illuminate social practices and daily activities. The Trindholm sun chariot, discovered in a Danish bog and dating to approximately 1400 BC, represents one of Bronze Age Europe's most sophisticated artistic achievements, combining advanced bronze working with symbolic representation of cosmological concepts. The artifact consists of a bronze horse pulling a gilded bronze disc mounted on a wheeled cart, with intricate decorative patterns that demonstrate mathematical precision and artistic sophistication. The disc's gold plating, applied through techniques that bonded thin gold sheets to bronze surfaces, created reflective properties that enhanced the object's symbolic association with solar imagery. Bronze lure horns from Nordic contexts demonstrate advanced understanding of metallurgical acoustics applied to musical instrument production, creating devices capable of producing complex musical tones across multiple octaves. These curved bronze horns, measuring up to 2 meters in length, required precise calculation of bore dimensions and wall thickness to achieve desired acoustic properties. Experimental reproduction has shown that skilled musicians could produce over 20 distinct notes from single instruments, enabling complex musical performances that accompanied religious ceremonies and social gatherings. Burial practices during the Nordic Bronze Age created some of Europe's most elaborate mortuary monuments, including massive stone ship settings and burial mounds that required coordinated labor from entire communities. The Kivik tomb in Sweden features a stone chamber decorated with petroglyphs depicting religious ceremonies, warfare scenes, and symbolic motifs that provide insight into Nordic Bronze Age worldviews and social practices. These images show figures carrying bronze axes and swords, participating in processions and performing rituals that connected earthly activities with cosmic forces. Bog burials from the Nordic Bronze Age preserve organic materials that demonstrate sophisticated textile production and personal ornamentation practices. The aged Vedgirl, discovered in a Danish bog dating to approximately 1370 BC, was buried wearing a woolen skirt, bronze belt disc, and arm rings that demonstrate high-quality craft production and personal wealth. Her clothing, preserved by bog chemistry, shows complex weaving techniques and decorative patterns that indicate specialized textile production and trade relationships that imported wool and finished textiles from distant regions. Rock art throughout Scandinavia documents Nordic Bronze Age activities and beliefs through thousands of petroglyphs carved into exposed rock surfaces. These images depict bronze weapons, ships, religious ceremonies, and daily activities that provide visual records of Bronze Age life unavailable from other archaeological sources. Ship motifs appear frequently in Nordic rock art, showing vessels with distinctive keel designs and crew arrangements that suggest advanced maritime technology adapted to Baltic Sea conditions. Bronze production in the Nordic region required extensive trade networks that imported copper and tin from Central Europe and the British Isles, creating commercial relationships that connected Scandinavia with broader European Bronze Age cultures. Archaeological evidence shows that Nordic communities exported amber, furs, and possibly slaves in exchange for metal raw materials, creating economic relationships that supported sophisticated bronze working despite the absence of local or sources. Amber trade routes extended from the Baltic coast to the Mediterranean, distributing Scandinavian amber throughout Bronze Age Europe while importing finished bronze objects and raw materials. The Urnfield culture, emerging around 1300 BC and lasting until approximately 800 BC, represents late Bronze Age Europe's most widespread cultural phenomenon, characterized by cremation burial practices, fortified settlements, and advanced bronze working techniques. This culture spread from Central Europe across much of the continent, introducing new burial practices that replaced earlier inhumation traditions with systematic cremation and urn burial. Archaeological evidence suggests that Urnfield expansion involved both population movements and cultural diffusion, creating hybrid communities that combined local traditions with Urnfield innovations. Cremation practices associated with Urnfield culture required sophisticated understanding of fire management and ceremonial procedures that transformed burial traditions throughout late Bronze Age Europe. Cremation sites show evidence for controlled burning that achieved temperatures exceeding 800 degrees Celsius necessary for complete bone calcination. The resulting cremated remains were collected and placed in ceramic urns that were buried in extensive cemeteries containing hundreds or thousands of individual burials, creating communal burial grounds that served multiple generations. Urnfield pottery demonstrates advanced ceramic technology that produced vessels with thin walls, complex shapes, and elaborate decorative programs. These urns, ranging from simple globular forms to complex multi-part vessels, show regional variations that reflect local artistic traditions while maintaining overall stylistic unity. Decorative techniques included incised geometric patterns, applied ornaments, and surface treatments that created distinctive visual effects through controlled firing atmospheres and post-firing applications. Settlement patterns during the Urnfield period show increasing emphasis on fortified positions that suggest growing social tensions and military conflicts throughout late Bronze Age Europe. Hill forts and fortified settlements appear throughout Urnfield territory, featuring defensive walls, strategic positioning, and internal organization that indicates systematic military planning. These settlements often controlled river crossings, mountain passes, or other strategic locations that enabled control over trade routes and boundaries. The Wasserburg-Buchow settlement in southern Germany demonstrates Urnfield defensive architecture adapted to wetland environments, featuring wooden palisades and earthwork fortifications that protected lake-edge communities from land-based attacks. Archaeological excavations have revealed systematic urban planning with designated areas for craft production, food storage, and residential occupation. Bronzeworking areas within the settlement show evidence for large-scale metal production that supplied both local consumption and export trade. Bronzeworking during the Urnfield period achieved unprecedented levels of sophistication through technological innovations that improved both functional performance and artistic quality. New alloy compositions reduced tin content in utilitarian objects while maintaining high concentrations in ceremonial items, creating cost efficiencies that supported expanded production. Decorative techniques included sheet bronze work, repousse decoration, and complex casting methods that enabled production of elaborate ceremonial objects and personal ornaments. Urnfield bronze swords represent pinnacles of late Bronze Age metallurgical achievement, featuring blade lengths exceeding 80 centimeters with complex hilt constructions that balanced cutting effectiveness with structural durability. These weapons, found throughout Urnfield territory, show standardized production methods that created interchangeable components and consistent performance characteristics. Sword blade analysis reveals sophisticated heat treatment techniques that created differential hardness patterns, with hard cutting edges and flexible spines that prevented breakage during combat. Regional variations within Urnfield culture demonstrate local adaptations of broader cultural patterns to specific environmental and social conditions. The Lusatian culture in Central Europe developed distinctive pottery styles and settlement patterns, while maintaining overall Urnfield characteristics. Alpine Urnfield communities created specialized bronze working techniques adapted to mountain environments and trade routes connecting northern and southern Europe. British Bronze Age developments during this period show influences from continental Urnfield culture, while maintaining distinctive insular characteristics. The Wilburton-Wallington metalwork tradition produced bronze objects with unique British design characteristics, including socketed axes, leaf-shaped swords, and elaborate horse harness fittings. These objects demonstrate sophisticated bronze working adapted to British sources and cultural preferences, while showing clear connections to continental European technological traditions. Hill forts throughout Bronze Age Britain demonstrate defensive architecture adapted to local topographical conditions, featuring earthwork ramparts, strategic positioning, and internal organization that controlled territorial boundaries and trade routes. Maiden Castle in Dorset shows multiple construction phases spanning several centuries, with increasingly elaborate defensive systems that suggest growing military pressures and social complexity. Archaeological evidence from British hill forts shows specialized craft production, long-distance trade, and social stratification that parallel developments in continental Europe. Bronze Age barrows throughout Britain created monumental landscapes that commemorated elite burials while demonstrating community labor organization and social hierarchies. The Normanton Down Barrow Cemetery near Stonehenge contains over 40 burial mounds dating between 2000 and 1500 BC, including the Bush Barrow burial with its elaborate gold and bronze grave goods. These monuments required coordinated construction efforts that moved thousands of tons of earth and stone to create artificial hills visible across extensive territories. Alpine lake dwellings represent unique adaptations of Bronze Age settlement patterns to specific environmental conditions, creating pile-built villages that utilized lake-edge locations for defense, transportation, and resource access. Sites like Courtyard in Switzerland show sophisticated wooden construction techniques that created stable foundations in waterlogged conditions while providing protection from land-based attacks. These settlements feature systematic urban planning with designated areas for different activities and sophisticated water management systems. Preservation conditions at alpine lake dwelling sites provide exceptional insight into Bronze Age organic material culture, including wooden tools, textiles, and food remains that rarely survive in other archaeological contexts. The Houtery of Champervert site has yielded thousands of wooden artifacts, including agricultural tools, construction elements, and household items that demonstrate sophisticated woodworking techniques and diverse economic activities. Bronze objects from these sites show local production combined with imported items that indicate extensive trade relationships. Iberian Bronze Age cultures developed distinctive characteristics that combined local traditions with influences from Mediterranean and Atlantic Europe. The El Algar culture in southeastern Spain created fortified settlements with sophisticated bronze working and social stratification that rivaled contemporary developments elsewhere in Europe. Archaeological evidence shows systematic urban planning, specialized craft production, and burial practices that indicate complex social hierarchies and territorial organization. Bronze working centers throughout Iberia produced weapons, tools, and ornaments that demonstrate advanced metallurgical techniques adapted to local or sources and cultural preferences. The Rio Tinto mining district in southern Spain provided copper ores that supported extensive bronze production, creating economic foundations for complex societies that controlled mining operations and trade networks. Archaeological evidence shows systematic mining techniques that extracted ores from deep underground workings using bronze tools and sophisticated engineering methods. Atlantic Bronze Age networks connected Iberian communities with Britain, Ireland, and Atlantic France through maritime trade relationships that distributed bronze objects, raw materials, and cultural influences across vast oceanic distances. Bronze axes, swords, and ornaments found throughout Atlantic Europe show design characteristics that indicate systematic cultural exchange and possibly coordinated production systems. These networks enabled technological diffusion and cultural interaction that created shared artistic traditions and metallurgical techniques across the Atlantic facade of Europe. The sophisticated bronze working networks that connected Atlantic Europe with Mediterranean civilizations through maritime trade routes would soon face unprecedented disruption as mysterious confederations of warriors and migrants swept across the eastern Mediterranean, bringing destruction to established Bronze Age powers and fundamentally altering the trajectory of ancient civilization. These groups, known collectively as the Sea Peoples from Egyptian records that documented their devastating campaigns, emerged from obscure origins around 1200 BC to challenge the military might of the Hittite Empire, devastate the prosperous cities of the Levantine coast, and ultimately force even mighty Egypt to marshal all its resources in desperate defensive campaigns. The identity of the Sea Peoples remains one of archaeology's most compelling mysteries, with scholarly debate continuing over their origins, motivations, and ultimate fate, despite decades of intensive research. Egyptian inscriptions from the reigns of Merneptah and Ramesses III provide the primary textual evidence for these groups, listing names that include the Pele set, Tika, Shikalesh, Dinayen, and Veshish, among others. These names have been tentatively connected to later historical peoples, including the Philistines, Sicilians, and Sardinians, suggesting possible connections between the Sea peoples and the populations that would later dominate various Mediterranean regions. Archaeological evidence increasingly supports theories that at least some Sea peoples originated from the collapse of Mycenaean civilization itself, as displaced populations from the Greek mainland and Aegean islands sought new territories following the destruction of their homeland palace centers. Excavations at sites like Enkomi in Cyprus and Ugarit on the Syrian coast reveal destruction layers containing distinctive pottery and metalwork that show clear Aegean influences, suggesting that Mycenaean refugees or raiders participated in the broader Sea peoples movements. The sudden appearance of Aegean-style cooking pots, stirrup jars, and bronze weapons at Levantine sites during this period indicate substantial population movements from the Greek world. Anatolian groups may have contributed significantly to Sea peoples' confederations as the Hittite Empire fragmented under internal pressures and external attacks around 1180 BC. The collapse of Hittite control over western Anatolia would have displaced thousands of warriors, craftsmen, and farmers who possessed sophisticated bronze working skills and military experience gained through centuries of imperial warfare. Archaeological evidence from sites like Troy, the Sphinx, shows destruction and cultural change that coincides chronologically with Sea peoples' activities, suggesting that the legendary Trojan War may represent historical memories of conflicts associated with these broader population movements. Mediterranean islanders, particularly from Sardinia, Sicily, and the smaller Aegean islands, appear to have played important roles in Sea peoples' activities based on both textual and archaeological evidence. The distinctive horned helmets depicted in Egyptian reliefs show Sea peoples' warriors closely resemble bronze figurines discovered in Sardinian contexts, indicating possible connections between these island populations and the raiders who attacked Egyptian territories. Sardinian bronze working during this period produced weapons and defensive equipment that demonstrate advanced metallurgical techniques and military specialization that would have equipped effective warrior bands. The systematic destruction of Bronze Age civilizations across the eastern Mediterranean occurred with remarkable speed and thoroughness, suggesting coordinated campaigns rather than random raiding activities. The Hittite Empire, which had dominated Anatolia and northern Syria for over 4 centuries, collapsed almost completely within a few decades around 1180 BC. Archaeological excavations at the Hittite capital of Hattusa reveal massive destruction layers containing burned administrative archives, collapsed defensive walls, and scattered bronze weapons that indicate violent conquest rather than gradual abandonment. The destruction of Hattusa eliminated the administrative center that coordinated Hittite military forces and provincial governance across their vast territorial holdings. Clay tablets from the final years of Hittite rule document desperate attempts to coordinate defensive measures against multiple simultaneous threats, including correspondence between the last Hittite kings and their Egyptian counterparts requesting military assistance. These diplomatic archives provide insight into the rapid deterioration of Hittite power as provincial governors lost contact with central authorities and local populations fled advancing enemy forces. Regional Hittite centers throughout Anatolia suffered similar fates as central authority collapsed and local defensive capabilities proved inadequate against Sea peoples' attacks. The fortress city of Alaka-Hoyuk, which had served as a major Hittite administrative center, shows evidence of systematic destruction, including burned storage areas, demolished defensive walls, and scattered human remains that suggest violent assault. Bronze weapons found in destruction contexts include both Hittite military equipment and foreign weapon types that indicate the attackers possessed sophisticated armaments and military organization. Ugarit, the prosperous trading city on the Syrian coast, provides perhaps the most detailed archaeological evidence for Sea People's destructive capabilities through extensive excavations that have revealed the final moments of this Bronze Age commercial center. The city's destruction around 1185 BC occurred so suddenly that scribes abandoned cuneiform tablets in mid-composition. Bronze smiths left unfinished weapons in their workshops, and residents fled without collecting valuable possessions. The archaeological record shows systematic burning that consumed wooden structures, while leaving stone foundations and bronze objects scattered throughout residential and commercial districts. The final letters from Ugarit's Royal Archive document the city's desperate situation as Sea People's forces approached from both land and sea directions. Correspondence with Cyprus describes naval battles and requests for military assistance that went unanswered as the island kingdom faced its own attacks. Letters to inland Syrian cities reveal that traditional alliance networks had collapsed, as each community focused on its own survival rather than coordinated defense. These documents provide contemporary testimony to the speed and effectiveness of Sea People's military campaigns. Ugarit's Bronze Working Quarter, one of the Eastern Mediterranean's most sophisticated metallurgical centers, shows evidence of hasty abandonment as craftsmen fled advancing attackers. Unfinished bronze weapons, scattered tools, and partially processed raw materials indicate that production ceased immediately when the city came under attack. The loss of Ugarit eliminated a major source of high-quality bronze weapons and tools that had supplied markets throughout the Eastern Mediterranean, contributing to the broader technological regression that followed the Bronze Age collapse. Cyprus experienced multiple waves of Sea People's attacks that destroyed existing settlements while introducing new populations and cultural traditions to the island. The major Bronze Age centers of Nkomi and Kizion show destruction layers followed by rebuilding phases that incorporated Aegean architectural styles, pottery traditions, and metalworking techniques. This pattern suggests that some Sea People's groups settled permanently on Cyprus rather than simply raiding and departing, creating hybrid communities that combined indigenous Cypriot traditions with imported cultural elements. The copper mines that had made Cyprus wealthy throughout the Bronze Age continued operating under new management as Sea People settlers adapted existing extraction and processing techniques to their own needs. Archaeological evidence shows continuity in mining operations despite political disruption, indicating that the economic foundations of Cypriot prosperity survived the transition even as political structures collapsed. The continued availability of Cypriot copper may have enabled some Sea People's groups to maintain their military effectiveness through sustained bronze weapon production. Economic factors contributing to the Bronze Age collapse extended far beyond military conquest to encompass systemic disruptions in trade networks, agricultural production, and craft specialization that had supported complex Bronze Age societies. The international trade systems that distributed tin from distant sources to bronze working centers throughout the Eastern Mediterranean depended on political stability and coordinated diplomatic relationships that could not survive the widespread warfare and population movements of the 12th century BC. Tin supply disruptions created immediate crises for bronze working communities as this essential alloying metal became increasingly difficult to obtain through traditional trade routes. Archaeological evidence shows declining tin concentrations in bronze objects from this period as metal workers attempted to conserve limited supplies or substituted other materials. Some communities reverted to pure copper tools and weapons, while others experimented with alternative alloys that produced inferior results compared to traditional tin bronze. Trade network disruption affected not only raw materials but also finished goods, luxury items, and specialized products that had circulated throughout Bronze Age Mediterranean markets. The collapse of long-distance commerce eliminated economic opportunities that had supported craft specialists, merchants, and administrative personnel in urban centers throughout the region. Archaeological evidence shows declining quality in pottery production, reduced variety in imported goods, and simplification of material culture as communities lost access to specialized products and technical knowledge. Climate change during the late 13th and early 12th centuries BC contributed to agricultural crises that weakened Bronze Age societies and may have triggered the population movements that became Sea Peoples migrations. Paleoclimatic evidence indicates cooling temperatures and reduced precipitation throughout the eastern Mediterranean that would have decreased agricultural productivity and stressed food production systems. These environmental pressures could have forced pastoral and agricultural communities to seek new territories, while undermining the economic foundations of established urban centers. Drought conditions documented in multiple paleoclimatic records from this period would have been particularly devastating for irrigation-dependent agricultural systems in Mesopotamia and Syria. Reduced river flows and failed harvests could have triggered social unrest, population migrations, and conflicts over remaining fertile territories. The combination of environmental stress and military pressure may have created cascading failures that overwhelmed the adaptive capacity of Bronze Age political systems. Internal political instability weakened many Bronze Age states during the critical period when Sea Peoples attacks intensified, creating vulnerabilities that external enemies could exploit effectively. Succession disputes, provincial rebellions, and administrative breakdown appear in contemporary records from multiple civilizations, indicating widespread governmental crisis that preceded or accompanied foreign invasions. The Hittite Empire experienced succession problems and provincial revolts that divided military resources and prevented coordinated responses to external threats. Social tensions within Bronze Age societies may have created internal enemies who welcomed or assisted Sea Peoples attackers as alternatives to existing political authorities. Archaeological evidence for class conflict, ethnic tensions, and economic inequality suggests that some populations may have viewed foreign conquest as opportunities for social advancement or revenge against ruling elites. The speed of Bronze Age collapse in some regions may reflect internal collaboration with external attackers rather than simple military conquest. Egypt, under Ramesses III, mounted the most successful resistance to Sea Peoples attacks through military innovations, diplomatic alliances, and resource mobilization that enabled the kingdom to survive when other Bronze Age powers collapsed. The Great Pharaoh's military campaigns against Sea Peoples forces, documented in detailed reliefs at Medinet Habu, demonstrate tactical adaptations that countered Sea Peoples' advantages while exploiting Egyptian strengths in logistics, fortification, and coordinated military operations. The naval battle depicted in Ramesses III's reliefs shows Egyptian forces engaging Sea Peoples' fleets in the Nile Delta, using tactics that combine traditional Egyptian military methods with innovations designed to counter Sea Peoples' naval capabilities. Egyptian archers positioned on riverbanks provided covering fire for Egyptian ships that used ramming tactics to disable enemy vessels. The relief shows Sea Peoples warriors wearing distinctive feathered headdresses and carrying round shields, providing detailed visual documentation of their equipment and appearance. Land battles between Egyptian forces and Sea Peoples armies reveal tactical innovations that enabled Egyptian victory despite facing opponents who had defeated other major Bronze Age powers. Egyptian infantry formations used bronze-tipped spears and composite bows to maintain distance from Sea People's warriors, while Egyptian chariots provided mobile platforms for archery attacks. The combination of disciplined formations, superior logistics, and defensive advantages allowed Egyptian forces to defeat Sea People's armies that had proven invincible elsewhere. The survival strategies employed by Egypt during this crisis period included massive fortification projects, military reforms, and diplomatic initiatives that created defensive capabilities adequate to resist Sea People's pressure. Ramesses III constructed new fortresses along Egypt's northern borders, while strengthening existing defensive positions with improved walls, garrison forces, and supply systems. These fortifications channeled Sea People's attacks into predetermined killing zones, where Egyptian advantages in archery and siege warfare could be most effectively employed. Military reforms under Ramesses III created professional military units equipped with standardized weapons and trained in coordinated tactics that proved effective against Sea People's forces. Egyptian military organization emphasized discipline, logistics, and combined arms operations that maximized the kingdom's resources, while compensating for numerical disadvantages against Sea People's confederations. The pharaoh's personal leadership of military campaigns provided symbolic and practical advantages that maintained Egyptian morale during desperate defensive struggles. The transformation of societies in the aftermath of Bronze Age collapse created new political structures, economic systems, and cultural traditions that would define the subsequent Iron Age period. Communities that survived the initial destruction faced challenges of rebuilding without access to traditional trade networks, administrative systems, or technological knowledge that had supported Bronze Age civilization. Archaeological evidence shows dramatic simplification of material culture, reduced settlement sizes, and technological regression that characterized the transition period. New settlement patterns emerged as survivors abandoned vulnerable urban centers in favor of defensible hilltop positions that could be more easily fortified and defended with limited resources. These Iron Age settlements typically featured strong defensive walls, internal water sources, and agricultural areas that could support siege conditions. The shift from Bronze Age urbanism to Iron Age fortified villages reflects changing priorities that emphasize security over commercial or administrative convenience. Cultural continuity in some regions enabled gradual recovery and adaptation rather than complete civilizational collapse, creating bridge communities that preserved Bronze Age knowledge while adapting to changed circumstances. Cyprus provides an excellent example of successful transition, as Sea People settlers integrated with surviving indigenous populations to create hybrid societies that maintained copper production while developing new political and social institutions. These transitional communities became centers for technological innovation and cultural synthesis that contributed to Iron Age development. The gradual adoption of iron technology during the centuries following Bronze Age collapse reflected both necessity and opportunity as communities adapted to reduced access to tin while exploiting new metallurgical possibilities. Early ironworking required different techniques and resources compared to bronze production, creating opportunities for technological innovation that eventually produced superior tools and weapons. The transition from Bronze Age to Iron Age represented not simply material substitution but fundamental changes in production methods, social organization, and cultural values that defined a new historical era. The devastation wrought by the Sea Peoples across the eastern Mediterranean created a technological and cultural vacuum that would be filled not by the restoration of Bronze Age systems, but by the gradual emergence of an entirely new metallurgical tradition. Iron technology, which had existed as a curiosity and luxury material during the height of Bronze Age civilization, began its transformation into the dominant metalworking tradition of the ancient world. This transition occurred not through sudden replacement, but through centuries of gradual adoption, technological refinement, and cultural adaptation that would ultimately reshape human civilization as profoundly as the original Bronze Revolution had done 2 millennia earlier. The earliest iron objects from Bronze Age contexts demonstrate that metallurgists had experimented with this metal long before it became economically viable or technologically superior to bronze. Iron beads from Egyptian tombs dating to 3200 BC created from meteoric iron through cold hammering techniques reveal that ancient craftsmen recognized iron's unique properties, even when they lacked the technology to smelt terrestrial iron ores. These early experiments remained curiosities rather than practical technologies because meteoric iron was extremely rare, and the high temperatures required for iron smelting exceeded the capabilities of Bronze Age furnace technology. The breakthrough in iron smelting occurred in Anatolia around 1500 BC, where Hittite metallurgists developed furnace designs capable of reaching the 1538 degrees Celsius required to melt iron ore. Archaeological excavations at sites like Kaman-Kalahoyuk have revealed iron production facilities that employed sophisticated bellows systems, specialized furnace construction, and carefully controlled atmospheric conditions to achieve successful iron smelting. These early ironworking installations required significantly more fuel than bronze production, consuming vast quantities of charcoal that placed enormous pressure on local forest resources. Hittite iron production initially focused on luxury items and ceremonial objects rather than utilitarian tools, reflecting both the technical difficulties of ironworking and cultural preferences that associated the metal with royal authority and divine power. Iron daggers from Hittite royal contexts feature elaborate gold inlay work and ceremonial designs that demonstrate the metal's prestigious status during this early period. King Tutankhamun's iron dagger, discovered in his tomb and dating to approximately 1323 BC, was likely manufactured from meteoric iron and represents one of the finest examples of early ironworking craftsmanship. The collapse of the Hittite Empire around 1180 BC dispersed ironworking knowledge throughout the eastern Mediterranean as displaced craftsmen carried their technological expertise to new regions. Archaeological evidence suggests that Hittite metallurgists established workshops in Cyprus, the Levant, and possibly Greece, introducing iron production techniques to communities that had previously relied entirely on bronze technology. This technological diffusion occurred gradually over several centuries as ironworking evolved from specialized luxury production to practical tool and weapon manufacturing. Early iron technology possessed significant disadvantages compared to mature bronze-working traditions, requiring more complex production processes while initially producing inferior results. Iron smelting demanded higher temperatures, more sophisticated furnace designs, and greater fuel consumption than bronze production, creating economic barriers that slowed adoption. Additionally, early iron objects were often inferior to bronze equivalents in hardness, durability, and corrosion resistance, making the transition economically unattractive for communities with established bronze working capabilities. The critical advantage that eventually enabled iron's dominance was the widespread availability of iron, or compared to the scarcity of tin required for bronze production. Iron ore deposits existed throughout Europe, Asia, and Africa in quantities that could support large-scale production without the extensive trade networks required for bronze manufacturing. This accessibility became crucial as Bronze Age trade systems collapsed and communities lost reliable access to tin supplies from distant sources. Local iron production enabled technological independence that bronze working could not provide under disrupted economic conditions. The development of steel production through controlled carbon content represented the technological breakthrough that made iron superior to bronze for tool and weapon applications. Early iron workers discovered that heating iron with charcoal and controlling cooling rates could create steel alloys with hardness exceeding the best bronze implements. Archaeological evidence from sites like Naricum in Austria show systematic steel production by 800 BC, using techniques that produce consistent results through careful temperature control and atmospheric management during smelting and forging operations. Quenching and tempering techniques developed during the early Iron Age enabled metallurgists to create steel tools and weapons with properties tailored to specific applications. Swords could be hardened for cutting effectiveness while maintaining flexible spines that prevented breakage during combat. Agricultural tools could be hardened at working edges while maintaining tough, shock-resistant bodies that withstood heavy use. These differential heat treatment methods required extensive knowledge and skill that took generations to develop and refine. Cultural continuities from the Bronze Age persisted despite technological transitions, creating hybrid traditions that combined Iron Age innovations with Bronze Age artistic and religious practices. Pottery production maintained stylistic traditions established during the Bronze Age while adapting to changed economic conditions and reduced trade contacts. Ceramic vessels from early Iron Age contexts show clear connections to Bronze Age decorative programs and functional forms, indicating cultural continuity despite political and economic disruption. Religious practices demonstrated remarkable persistence across the Bronze-Iron Age transition, with archaeological evidence showing continued use of Bronze Age sacred sites and ceremonial traditions adapted to Iron Age conditions. The sanctuary at Olympia in Greece maintained continuous religious activity from the late Bronze Age through the Classical period, with votive offerings showing gradual transition from bronze to iron objects while maintaining consistent ritual practices. Sacred groves, springs, and hilltop sanctuaries throughout Europe continued serving religious functions as communities adapted Bronze Age spiritual traditions to Iron Age social structures. Artistic traditions established during the Bronze Age influenced Iron Age decorative arts through continued use of geometric patterns, animal motifs, and symbolic representations that transcended technological changes. The Hallstatt culture of Central Europe, flourishing from 800 to 450 BC, produced iron weapons and tools decorated with artistic programs derived from Bronze Age traditions. Hallstatt bronze vessels, continuing Bronze Age production methods, alongside iron technology, demonstrate technological coexistence rather than simple replacement during the transition period. Urban planning concepts developed during Bronze Age civilizations provided foundations for Iron Age settlement organization, with fortified hilltop sites employing defensive principles established by Bronze Age military engineers. The Opday of late Iron Age Europe featured defensive walls, internal street systems, and specialized craft quarters that reflected Bronze Age urban planning adapted to Iron Age conditions. These settlements maintained population densities and organizational complexity comparable to Bronze Age centers, while adapting to changed political and economic circumstances. Governmental structures emerging during the Iron Age incorporated administrative concepts and political institutions developed during Bronze Age civilizations, creating continuity in political organization despite technological and cultural changes. The Greek polis system employed assembly procedures, legal frameworks, and administrative practices that showed clear connections to Mycenaean palace bureaucracies documented in Linear B archives. Similarly, Iron Age kingdoms throughout Europe and Asia adopted monarchical institutions, military organizations, and tribute systems that reflected Bronze Age political innovations adapted to local conditions. Writing systems represented perhaps the most important Bronze Age legacy, with alphabetic scripts developed during the Late Bronze Age providing foundations for Iron Age literacy and administrative capability. The Phoenician alphabet, derived from Bronze Age Canaanite scripts, spread throughout the Mediterranean during Iron Age expansion, enabling Greek, Etruscan, and Latin writing systems that would dominate European intellectual development. This alphabetic revolution democratized literacy by reducing the years of training required for scribal competence, creating broader access to written communication than Bronze Age syllabic systems had provided. Trade practices established during Bronze Age commercial networks influenced Iron Age economic development through continued use of standardized weights, measures, and exchange mechanisms. Mediterranean commerce during the Iron Age employed trading procedures, contract systems, and quality control measures that reflected Bronze Age innovations adapted to change political conditions. The Phoenicians, inheriting Bronze Age Canaanite commercial traditions, established trading networks that connected Iron Age communities across the Mediterranean while maintaining business practices developed during Bronze Age prosperity. Metallurgical knowledge transfer from Bronze Age to Iron Age craftsmen occurred through master-apprentice relationships that preserved technical expertise while adapting it to new materials and methods. Archaeological evidence from sites like La Tine in Switzerland shows workshops where bronze and iron working coexisted, with craftsmen applying Bronze Age decorative techniques to iron objects while developing new methods suited to iron's different working properties. This technological synthesis created artistic traditions that combined Bronze Age aesthetic principles with Iron Age functional requirements. Archaeological preservation of sites has provided modern scholars with detailed understanding of ancient technological, social, and cultural systems through systematic excavation, scientific analysis, and interdisciplinary research methods. Underwater archaeology has recovered Bronze Age shipwrecks like those at Ulubrin and Cape Gelidonia, revealing international trade networks, cargo compositions, and maritime technologies that illuminate Bronze Age economic systems. These underwater sites preserve organic materials and metal objects that rarely survive in terrestrial contexts, providing unique insights into Bronze Age material culture. Technological analysis employing modern scientific methods has revolutionized understanding of Bronze Age metallurgy, craft production, and technological innovation. X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy enables precise determination of alloy compositions, revealing deliberate metallurgical choices and technological capabilities that demonstrate Bronze Age craftsmen's sophisticated understanding of material properties. Lead isotope analysis traces metal sources to specific or deposits, reconstructing trade networks and resource exploitation patterns across vast geographical areas. Interdisciplinary research combining archaeology, geology, climatology, and other scientific disciplines has created comprehensive understanding of Bronze Age environmental conditions, agricultural systems, and human-environment interactions. Paleoclimatic reconstruction using ice cores, tree rings, and lake sediments provides detailed records of Bronze Age climate change, enabling correlation between environmental conditions and cultural developments. These studies reveal how Bronze Age societies adapted to climatic variations, while demonstrating environmental factors that contributed to civilizational collapse and recovery. Experimental archaeology has tested Bronze Age technologies through practical reproduction of ancient techniques, tools, and manufacturing processes. Researchers have successfully recreated Bronze Age metallurgy, pottery production, textile manufacturing, and construction methods, providing insights into technical requirements, skill levels, and time investments required for ancient production. These experiments demonstrate the sophistication of Bronze Age technology while revealing practical constraints that influenced ancient economic and social organization. Digital technologies have transformed Bronze Age research through database systems that integrate archaeological data from thousands of sites, enabling comparative analysis and pattern recognition across vast spatial and temporal scales. Geographic information systems mapping reveals settlement patterns, trade routes, and territorial organization that illuminate Bronze Age political and economic systems. Three-dimensional modeling reconstructs Bronze Age architecture, urban planning, and landscape organization with unprecedented accuracy and detail. The Bronze Age legacy extends far beyond technological innovation to encompass fundamental concepts of civilization that continue influencing modern society. Urban planning principles developed in Bronze Age cities established patterns of specialized districts, public spaces, and infrastructure systems that remain central to contemporary urban design. Legal systems originating in Bronze Age law codes created precedents for property rights, commercial regulation, and judicial procedures that form foundations of modern legal frameworks. International diplomacy during the Bronze Age established protocols for treaty negotiation, territorial boundaries, and conflict resolution that prefigured modern international law and practice. The Amarna letters and other Bronze Age diplomatic archives document sophisticated understanding of sovereignty, alliance systems, and commercial regulation that created precedents for international relations. These diplomatic innovations enabled peaceful coexistence among competing powers while facilitating cultural exchange and technological diffusion. Educational institutions emerging during the Bronze Age created systematic approaches to knowledge transmission, professional training, and cultural preservation that established foundations for formal education systems. Scribal schools in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and other Bronze Age civilizations developed curriculum standards, instructional methods, and evaluation procedures that influenced educational practice throughout subsequent history. The preservation of Bronze Age literature, scientific knowledge, and technical expertise through written records created intellectual foundations that supported continued cultural development during periods of political instability. The transformation from Bronze Age to Iron Age civilizations represents not an ending but a metamorphosis, where the accumulated knowledge, institutions, and cultural achievements of humanity's first great technological age provided the foundation for even greater developments to come. The bronze tools that had enabled the construction of pyramids and ziggurats gave way to iron plows that would open new agricultural frontiers, while the administrative systems that had governed Bronze Age empires evolved into the political institutions that would unite vast territories under Roman law. The writing systems that had recorded Bronze Age commerce and literature became the vehicles for Greek philosophy and Roman engineering, carrying forward the intellectual achievements of the Bronze Age into new realms of human accomplishment. In this great transition, the Bronze Age did not simply end but transformed itself, leaving an indelible legacy in the technological capabilities, social institutions, and cultural traditions that would define human civilization for millennia to come. The bronze vessels that had honored Bronze Age gods found their spiritual successors in iron weapons that would defend new nations, while the trade networks that connected Bronze Age merchants evolved into the commercial systems that would bind together the Iron Age world. Thus, the Bronze Age, in its ending, achieved its greatest triumph, the creation of foundations so strong and innovations so profound that they would support the continued ascent of human civilization, long after the last bronze sword had been forged and the final Bronze Age city had fallen to ruin.